Chapter 739. The sky above the vast ocean was dotted with stars. The air was cold and humid, mixed with a hint of saltiness. Under the night sky, the water was as dark as ink. Under the dim light, the waves piled up. In the air, a white shadow flickered, and a young man wearing a white short-sleeved shirt and coffee-colored pants walked out as if he had torn a gap in the dark night. The temperature on the sea was at least below zero, but the man did not feel cold at all. It was as if he was taking a stroll in front of his home. This person was none other than Yang Chen, who had rushed here after teleporting continuously and found his target in the Pacific Ocean. After arriving at the coordinates given by Makedon, Yang Chen was not in a hurry to check on the situation on the sea. Instead, he looked up at the sky, lost in his thoughts for some reason. Although he had been using his cultivation base many times recently without any problems, Yang Chen had a vague feeling that something bad would happen if he were to use his cultivation base recklessly. It was a mysterious sense of danger that came when one's cultivation reached a high level. Just like when he took the plane from Yanjin to Zhonghai, even though he could teleport there quickly, Yang Chen still chose to take the plane if it was not necessary. The last time he teleported to the Philippines, the sense of danger wasn't particularly strong. But this time, he had teleported halfway across the world. For some reason, Yang Chen's eyebrows twitched. His mind was shrouded in a layer of fog. It was like a lingering shadow, making him very uncomfortable. Yang Chen hesitated. He wondered if he should ask Yen Sanyang about the side effects of breaking through to the Xiantian full cycle after everything was over. If it wasn't, then there might really be a problem with his cultivation. After all, he could be considered to be exploring his own path. No one would tell him if it was right or wrong. Shaking his head, Yang Chen let out a sigh. He did not want to think about that problem anymore. Instead, he scanned the surface of the sea, looking for clues. Even though it was night, it was as bright as day in Yang Chen's eyes. Within a radius of more than 10 nautical miles, there were broken parts of the U.S. fleet everywhere. Large parts had all sunk to the bottom of the sea, but there were still many daily necessities of the Navy floating, as well as some buoyant decks and lifeboats. However, with the degree of destruction on the ships, there was no chance of survival for the people. Just the explosion of these warships, especially the explosion of the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, with a lot of missiles with nuclear warheads, not to mention the people on the ships, even the creatures in the sea were killed. Such destruction was done in less than a minute. This was the terrifying scene brought about by the unsealed divine power of space. This also proved once again that the god's self-sealing was indeed quite necessary. Yang Chen did some calculations in his mind. From this position, the fleet's destination should be Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, United States. The guy who impersonated him chose to attack Midway instead of going to the military base to wreak havoc. It could be seen that his goal was to make him the scapegoat and not to start a huge war. Otherwise, if the UA military's Pearl Harbor was also smashed into pieces, then the UA would completely fall out with them. After all, it was a frontier base on the Pacific Ocean that they had painstakingly rebuilt. If their home was destroyed, how could they still keep their cool? Moreover, the key point was that there would not be any ordinary merchant ships or cruise ships passing through this area of the sea, which was very beneficial to the information blockade after the fleet was destroyed. This also meant that the impersonator's key goal was to target him, to make him be besieged by everyone, and not to cause a huge worldwide panic. Yang Chen spread out his divine sense and carefully felt this area of the sea to see if there were any traces of the impersonator's divine power left behind. After all, every Lord God's divine power of space was the same in principle, but the differences in the details were innumerable and not all the same. It was like the identity documents used by humans, it was very difficult to imitate. Unfortunately, almost an hour had passed. No matter how Yang Chen searched, he could not feel the slightest imprint of divine power. Did he really have to go to the United States and explain to the FBI and CIA? Say that he had an alibi and had been staying at home at that time. The problem was, if he said so, would they believe him so easily? Just as Yang Qing was having a headache and did not know what to do, a familiar force was approaching from the east in an instant. A blonde wearing a gorgeous black lace dress and a pair of snow-white feet that looked like they were carved out of art walked out of the void in an enchanting and elegant manner. There was a layer of worry and doubt in her gem-like eyes. She opened her mouth to ask Yang Qing, "It's not you, is it?" The person who came was Kristen, who had rushed to the scene. Dressed in this outfit, she seemed to be participating in some activity. Not only did she leave midway, she even kicked off her pair of high heels. Yang Chen felt a surge of warmth in his heart. Kristen must have found out about what happened to him through her intelligence channels. However, the first thing she asked him was that she chose to trust him. It was evident that this blabbermouth beauty was still a loyal friend. "Do you think I'm that bored? It's enough that I'm busy dealing with the relationship problems between my wife and my lover. How can I have the mood to argue with the U.S. Navy? Could it be that I'm tired of living and have to break the Treaty of Gods so that you and Hongmeng can annihilate me together?" Yang Qing smiled bitterly. Kristen breathed a sigh of relief and immediately smiled. "I thought so too. You don't look like such a stupid person. Besides, even if you want to vent your anger, you won't let the video have a chance to capture you." Suddenly, Kristen heard something else in his words. She was shocked and asked, "You know about Hongmeng?" Yang Qing was stunned for a moment, but then he understood. Not to mention the previous Pluto, Kristen, the two siblings from the Cromwell family, and Ares had never mentioned the history of the war between the gods and Hongmeng tens of thousands of years ago. When Yen Sanyang told him about the history, he had thought that Kristen and the others could not bear to look back on it, so they did not mention it. "We've met once before, but we didn't have much contact. In fact, it's been tens of thousands of years, and we don't interfere with each other's affairs. You don't have to be so agitated." Yang Qing smiled. Kristen's expression changed, and she snorted. "What do you know? Why do we not interfere with each other's affairs? Hades, since you've inherited the divinity, you should stand on our side. In the future, when you see the people of Hongmeng, don't give them any face. A group of sinister and despicable people who only know how to hide in Huaxia like turtles, not daring to fight us head-on. If it weren't for their tricks tens of thousands of years ago, they would have been slaughtered by Zeus and Athena." Kristen seemed to be extremely angry. Her usual noble temperament had become a little irritable, and her eyes were filled with coldness. Yang Cheng's mind was filled with questions. After a while, he asked, "You're saying that the people of Hongmeng were no match for you tens of thousands of years ago?" "Of course not." Kristen frowned, and then she came back to her senses. "From what you're saying, it seems like you know something about what happened back then. Why, do you think we were the ones who lost the war?" Yang Cheng's mind raced. Judging from Kristen's expression, she was not lying, and there was no reason for her to lie to him. However, Yen Sanyang had clearly told him that the gods were the ones who lost the war, and that it was the benevolent seniors of Hongmeng who allowed them to develop in the world outside of Huaxia. But now, or it seemed like Yen Sanyang was not telling the truth. Kristen frowned and sneered. "That seems to be the case. Why, did the people of Hongmeng tell you that we lost to them?" Yang Qing thought for a while, and then shook his head. "I don't know if that person can be considered as a person of Hongmeng. However, her martial arts cultivation has broken through the Khanate full cycle, and according to her, it's called the soul forming." "That's right," Kristen said seriously. "I can explain this to you. After all, the people of Hongmeng who are still alive now are the young ones who have only been around for a few hundred years. They don't know much about the strength of their predecessors from tens of thousands of years ago. Although I don't practice the martial arts of Huaxia, I know that after entering the Khanate full cycle from the acquired stage, one can be considered as a member of Hongmeng as long as he breaks through the Khanate full cycle. However, To enter the tribulation stage from the soul-forming stage is 1 in 10,000. I remember when we first came to Earth, the entire Huaxia, Hongmeng had not been established yet, and there were less than 10 people who had entered the tribulation stage. Only those few people could fight against Zeus and Athena. There were also some experts in the soul-forming stage, but if Zeus and Athena were to fight against them, they would not stand a chance. What? Yang Chen's mind was filled with shock. Kristen's words were completely different from Yen Sanyang's. According to Kristen, the war that happened tens of thousands of years ago was at most a draw. It was not an easy victory for the ancestors of Huaxia. Christine shook her head with a bitter smile. Hades, I didn't mention this part of history to you before because it's meaningless to mention it. Instead, it'll make you unhappy, and it'll make your people who live in Huaxia uncomfortable. However, it seems that you have been deceived by them. I have to let you know the truth. Chapter 740. Yang Qing slapped his forehead. I get it now. There is no such thing as true or false in history. As long as it is beneficial to one side, it will be rewritten. Perhaps the person who told me this wasn't lying to me. It was just that what she knew was their own victorious history that was passed down in Hongmeng. You're right. What you know is complete nonsense, Kristen said disdainfully. Perhaps there were indeed some people among the ancestors of Huaxia who were far more powerful than we could imagine. However, when we came to Earth tens of thousands of years ago, the spiritual energy on Earth, that is, the energy needed for cultivation after reaching the Xiantian full cycle, was already at its lowest point. At that time, the cultivators of Hongmeng were no match for their ancestors. The strongest cultivators were only at the tribulation passing stage. Although there were tens of thousands of them, our Protoss also had an army of tens of thousands of gods. Why would we be afraid of them? What's more, the 12 of us could reincarnate almost indefinitely. As for the cultivators of Huaxia, once they died, they died. They couldn't live long at all. How could they be a match for us? Yang Qing frowned. A trace of doubt arose in his mind. That's not right. Last time when I fought with Ares, my true chi broke his frozen space. It can be seen that Huaxia's martial arts can restrain the law of space. Then how did you guys win back then? What's more, now that I've broken through to the Khanate full cycle, I feel that my true chi is more than twice as strong as before. The law of space should be even less of a threat. You also said that there were more than a dozen experts at the tribulation passing stage. Their strength should be above mine. No matter how strong Zeus and Athena are, they can't be so ridiculously strong, right? Kristen looked at Yang Qing strangely. Hades, who on earth have you heard this bunch of nonsense from? What do you mean? Yang Qing felt a little creeped out by this woman's stare. Humph. Kristen rolled her eyes and said, You look down on yourself too much. Let me ask you a random question. How many people know the martial arts that you practice? Yang Qing pondered for a moment. He remembered what Abbess Yunmiao had told him before, so he said, It said that. I'm practicing Shushan's endless resolve restoration scripture. Ever since this technique came into existence, only a handful of people have been able to practice it due to its extremely high level of comprehension and physical fitness. After the senior who taught me passed away many years ago, I'm probably the only one who knows it. Then it's over. Kristen said, Do you think that every single one of Huaxia's martial arts has the same combat power? Even if you've reached the soul formation stage, the techniques you've learned are divided into high and low levels. That martial art of yours is clearly superior to the vast majority of martial arts, which means that your starting point is already higher than most soul formation stage cultivators. Do you think that just because you were able to use true chi to break through Ares' spatial power, others can do the same? You mean even at the soul-forming stage and the tribulation passing stage, there are different levels of strength? Yang Cheng's mind lit up. Why didn't he think of it? Yes, although there were thousands of paths leading to the same goal in terms of realm, realm didn't represent combat power. For example, if it was a sorcerer who had been practicing Zen for decades, his understanding of heaven and earth was simply unfathomable. However, even if it was a monk in his early 20s, although he didn't have a deep understanding of Buddhism, he still practiced martial arts. When two monks met, no matter how rich the sorcerer's experience was and how deep his understanding was, he would still be defeated by the monk who knew martial arts. This was because combat relied on strength, speed, and techniques, not realm. After Kristen mentioned it, Yang Qing suddenly felt that a new perspective had opened up in front of him. It turned out that he had always confused realm with strength. In fact, it was no wonder that Yang Qing had misunderstood everything. The people he had met before, whether it was Ling Xuzi or Yen Sanyang, were all in the soul-forming stage and had combat power. Otherwise, Hongming wouldn't have sent Ling Xuzi as Hongming's messenger, and Yen Sanyang wouldn't have been protecting Yang Gongming all the time. Because of this, Yang Qing had always felt that once one entered the soul-forming stage, one's strength would be on par with others. However, he didn't know that Yen Sanyang had only seen a small part of it. Kristen explained faintly, "Hades, let me tell you. Tens of thousands of years ago, more than 80% of the ordinary soul-forming stage cultivators reached the soul-forming stage, but their combat power was very ordinary. Their true inner force could only compete with the spatial divine power of the ordinary Protoss. Most of the time, they would learn some natural elemental spells to fight with us. Only a few hundred of them could really pose a threat to the 12 of us. Actually, you're quite stupid to believe that we were the ones who lost the war. Think about it. If we were the ones who lost the war, why did the ancestors of Huaxia only occupy the territory of Huaxia, while we occupied all the other places on Earth? It's because they knew that both sides would suffer if they continued to fight, so they acquiesced to our arrival." Yang Qing nodded. Indeed, this was very illogical. When Yen Sanyang first told him about it, he didn't think too much about it. Now that Kristen explained it, it was full of loopholes. As for why the gods didn't allow them to reincarnate into the bodies of the people of Huaxia, it was probably because they didn't want to possess the people of their enemy. Moreover, after reincarnation, they would use human bodies to give birth to descendants outside of Huaxia. Naturally, the gods would be interested to see their descendants, even if they didn't have their own blood. Just like Judy from Blue Storm, whom he had killed previously, she was a descendant of one of Kristen's reincarnations. Then, Yang Qing thought of something strange. He asked in confusion, "If that's the case, why was Ares so surprised by my martial arts when I sparred with him? Didn't he also experience the war tens of thousands of years ago?" Kristen frowned. "Did he ask you? What did you say you were practicing?" I said, "It's Huaxia's internal energy." After saying that, Yang Qing came to a sudden realization. He laughed and said, "So that's how it is. The cultivators you fought back then were at least at the soul-forming stage, so they used true inner force. I was only using true qi at the stage of internal energy. Whether it's the feeling or the name, it's quite different. No wonder he treated it as a new power." Kristen looked at Yang Qing as if he was a monster. "Hades, you mean? The martial arts you learned from Huaxia broke Ares's space freeze before it reached the state of true inner force?" Yang Qing was quite proud of himself. "How about it? It's not bad, right?" Kristen bit her lip and said sourly, "It's not just not bad. Even those who passed the tribulation stage tens of thousands of years ago rarely had such an overbearing skill. Your starting point is so high that it makes people jealous." As she said that, a trace of anxiety flashed across Kristen's face. She stamped her foot in the void and said, "No. Hades, you may break through to the tribulation stage in the future. At that time, you will be someone who can hurt Zeus and Athena. You can't betray us. At the very least, you have to guarantee your neutrality." Yang Qing was puzzled. Why do I always hear you talking about how strong Zeus and Athena are? Are they really that terrifying? Kristen sighed, and there was a bit of awe in her eyes. I can only tell you that among the 12 main gods, Ares is the weakest one, although he likes to fight. He barely enters the level of us 12 main god. It's because he knows that his real strength is the weakest that he likes to fight and hopes to cover up this fact through fighting. The next one is me. My combat power is similar to Ares's. I told you last time that your understanding of the law of space is not bad, but I didn't tell you the truth. It's not necessary, and I don't want to hurt your self-esteem. But the truth is, the difference in strength between us 12 main gods is really big. As for the others, even Apollo and Diana, who you have already met, are far stronger than us. It's just that they may not show their true strength in front of you. Not to mention your predecessor, Hades, Poseidon, and the others. As for Zeus and Athena, I've already told you about them. If it weren't for the treacherous Huaxia cultivators tens of thousands of years ago, they wouldn't have been able to resist Zeus and Athena. Huaxia would have long been conquered by us. Yang Cheng's heart sank. This night was really worth it. He had greatly reduced his confidence. He could not believe it and said with a bitter smile, I don't get it. How strong can the monotonous law of space be? Even if there is a divine artifact to help, isn't it just the power of space? You have to know that once you reach the soul formation stage, you can be said to have jumped out of the 3 realms. You can't even talk about the restraint of space, so how can it be lethal? Kristen was about to explain, but her expression suddenly changed. It's Neptune? At the same time, Yang Cheng also felt a wave of energy coming from the east and west. This was clearly the pressure of a main god, and it was unprecedentedly strong. Neptune? Isn't that Poseidon? The new Hades, since you look down on the law of space of the Protoss, why don't you fight with me? I'll show you what the real law of space is. Chapter 741. When the voice reached their ears, a figure was already standing in front of Yang Cheng and Kristen, forming a triangle. Kristen's beautiful eyes flashed with a trace of worry. She quickly said, Poseidon, don't misunderstand Hades. He's not the one who violated the covenant this time. Poseidon ignored the woman and looked straight at Yang Cheng. At the same time, Yang Cheng was also looking at the Sea King with interest. Although he had received Hades' divinity, he did not know much about the god. This was the first time he saw the person that Kristen mentioned was second only to Zeus and Athena. Of course, he was excited. What made Yang Cheng dazed was the attire of this big shot. It was really scary. He's a chef. He was wearing a white robe, a pair of dirty leather boots, and a chef's hat. There were a few English letters embroidered on the chest of the chef's uniform, indicating that it was a seafood restaurant in Honolulu. The man looked to be in his 50s. He had a grayish-white beard and some wrinkles on his face. He was tall and strong with grayish-blue eyes. This old white man could be found all over the streets in America. Who would have thought that the famous Sea King Poseidon would become a chef in this reincarnation? You seem surprised, Poseidon said with a poker face. Yang Cheng touched his face and tried not to laugh. He said with a serious face, I've heard about you for a long time. Now that I've met you, you live up to your reputation. Yang Cheng's brain short-circuited and did not know what to say. The moment he said it, it became a greeting. Kristen could not help but giggle. Poseidon, Hades is very surprised by your profession. How many times have I told you? Even if you don't want to be a military officer, you don't have to be a chef. Poseidon turned to look at the woman. Her beauty did not affect his expression at all. Aphrodite, you'd better stay away. I don't want to hurt the innocent. Kristen's pretty face stiffened. She thought that by smiling like this, she wouldn't have to see the 2 men fighting. She couldn't help but say angrily, Neptune, why do you still want to fight? I told you, Hades didn't do it. Don't tell me you don't believe me? I believe what I saw in the video. As for whether it's true or not, I'll know once I test it, Poseidon said with a straight face. Kristen still wanted to say something, but the next second, Poseidon did not want to speak anymore. A domineering pressure suddenly spread out, as if a fierce storm with a radius of hundreds of nautical miles had appeared in the sky above the entire sea. Unsealed. Seeing that, Christine didn't bother to persuade him any further. She gave Yang Cheng a worried look that said, "Take care," and similarly unsealed herself, teleporting hundreds of nautical miles away with her spatial powers. Damn it, you don't even give me time to explain. Why are you even more violent than Ares? Yang Cheng's expression was also uncertain. In the previous battle with Ares, both of their unsealed powers were not as powerful as Poseidon's divine power. If it weren't for the fact that they were in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, the power of the unsealing would have been enough to flatten a large city. As expected, the difference in the power of the main gods was really huge. But since Poseidon had already made it clear that he did not believe him and wanted to test him, Yang Cheng also knew that there was no point in saying anything more. His eyes flashed, and a relatively weak pressure spread out, barely clashing with Poseidon's aura. Your divine power is a far cry from your predecessors. Poseidon sneered disdainfully. At the same time, two azure lights lit up in his grayish-blue eyes, as if a soul was about to burst out from his eyes. Yang Chen was struggling to withstand the terrifying pressure, and he felt that the space around him was like a ball, starting to shrink, and he was about to be squeezed into this space. Yang Chen did not dare to be careless. From the start, he used the spatial laws to the extreme. With one hand, he slashed forward, and a crushing law slashed at the spherical barrier. But to Yang Cheng's surprise, the space was actually rotating. It was as if a parallel space had been bent into a ball, and then given a rotating force, causing the space to continuously revolve around an axis, sucking in more spatial power like a vortex. Although Yang Cheng's spatial law power had broken a hole, because of the rotation of the sphere, another layer of spatial power not only filled the hole, but also turned the hole in another direction. If one were to look from afar, they would be able to see that the overwhelming seawater had formed a huge sphere in the sky above the ocean where water and hurricanes intertwined. Layer after layer of seawater did not all come from the ocean. Most of the seawater had inexplicably gushed out from the void. Different parallel spaces intertwined at this moment, forming more than 100 layers of spatial vortexes, swallowing the tiny human figure. Because it was night time, this sphere was like a black ball that covered the sky and the moon, roaring like a sea monster. Other than the angry blue light in Poseidon's eyes, he did not move at all. He looked extremely relaxed. Yang Chen, who was trapped in this space, was having a hard time. No matter how he attacked the spherical barrier, he couldn't break it. On the contrary, the space inside the sphere was constantly being compressed, and the pressure of the space was increasing exponentially. Yang Cheng suddenly felt the blood in his body churning. He barely managed to control the spatial barrier to protect himself, but there was only a few hundred feet of space left. At this moment, the sphere had already formed a monstrous tornado, as if it was connected to the sea and sky, like a deep-sea dragon breaking through the clouds. Whether it was Yang Cheng himself or Ares, they could only use parallel spaces to break and fold them. Yang Cheng never thought that the use of spatial laws could also allow dozens or hundreds of spaces to be used at the same time. Not only was it simple folding, but it could also be twisted into other states. This sounded easy, but what was really needed was divine sense and divine power. The difference was like heaven and earth. This space was like a thin piece of paper. One could easily tear it, but when dozens or hundreds of pieces were stacked together and used at the same time, even a metal cutter might not be able to cut it. Furthermore, this space was constantly moving. Countless quantum particles would replenish and strengthen it. Feeling some of the blood vessels in his body start to burst, Yang Cheng no longer cared about the strange, ominous feeling he had previously felt. He mobilized the true inner force of the endless resolve restoration scripture and circulated it quickly in his great circulatory cycle. The true inner force filled his limbs and bones, instantly reducing the pressure. Yang Cheng let out a long roar and stopped using spatial laws. He activated a layer of true inner force, raised his hand and pointed forward. A vigorous true inner force was like the first ray of golden light that broke through the clouds. It was silent, but when it came into contact with the spatial barrier, it suddenly broke through dozens of layers of space. It was effective. Yang Cheng was delighted. As expected, the true inner force was many times stronger than the true qi from before. It actually broke through dozens of layers of spatial power in an instant. In the distance, Poseidon smirked. "You're too naive." As soon as he said that, before Yang Cheng could increase the output of his true inner force, the spiral sphere suddenly changed. The hundreds of layers of space that were originally rotating in one direction actually began to rotate in the opposite direction as the layers intertwined. This way, there was all kinds of friction between the spaces. Powerful quantum collisions caused turbulence, causing the entire space sphere to be filled with electricity. The quantum storm was like countless sharp blades that cut through space, sweeping towards Yang Cheng. Yang Cheng had true inner force to protect his body, but he still felt the entire true inner force shield start to feel a huge pressure. It was as if it was on the verge of collapse and could be broken at any time. Involuntarily, Yang Cheng started to complain about that woman Kristen. How could the difference in strength between main gods be so simple? It was like the difference between heaven and earth. No wonder Apollo and Diana said that they could not defeat Athena even if they joined forces. This Poseidon could easily make him struggle. Just how terrifying was Athena? Judging from Kristen's words, in her eyes, he wasn't even as good as Apollo and Diana. These thoughts only lasted for a split second. Yang Cheng did not dare to stop and once again increased the output of his true inner force. A majestic true inner force, like a straight shock wave, fiercely blasted into the chaotic spinning space prison in front of him. But not long after, Yang Cheng's face turned pale. The true inner force that he had blasted out with all his strength had only been able to break through less than half of the superimposed space before dissipating. It seemed that when his true qi could break through Ares's spatial power, it was on a completely different level. This was because Ares could not manipulate multiple layers of space. If he could be like Poseidon, he could create dozens or even hundreds of layers with a wave of his hand. No matter how hard he tried, it would be useless. For example, a steel knife could cut through a piece of paper, but when 100 pieces of paper were stacked together, how could it be so easy to cut through them? Even if you cut through the first 50 pieces of paper, all you had to do was move the paper intertwined and the cut would disappear without a trace. And the various forms of quantum that made up the space were much more resilient than the paper. Previously, he had believed Yen Sanyang's words of beyond the 3 realms, beyond the 5 elements. That was **T. He did not know if Yen Sanyang had been deceived by Hongming's pseudo-historical theory, or if she had misunderstood it. Although true inner force could travel through parallel spaces, it did not mean that it would not be consumed during the process. No matter how strong one's cultivation was, as long as one was in the universe, all energy was a form of quantum. The only difference was the form of advancement. If one's cultivation could not be raised above the universe, how could one have the ability to break through all the energy in the universe? At this moment, Yang Cheng felt like killing himself. It's scary to be uneducated. Yen Sanyang had caused his own death. Yang Cheng now fully believed that in the war tens of thousands of years ago, the gods were definitely not the weaker side. Just this move of Poseidon's could have turned many soul-forming stage cultivators into ashes. After all, soul-forming stage cultivators were only humans, and their combat power might not be comparable to his. If they died, their bodies and souls would be destroyed. Chapter 742. But now, Yang Qing had no time to think about that part of history. He cursed Poseidon for being so shameless. He was not the one who had done it, and he was not the one who had violated the covenant. Poseidon had attacked indiscriminately. Was he going to destroy his body today and be forced to reincarnate? Hundreds of nautical miles away, Kristen barely managed to conjure up a spatial shield to block the quantum shock. She wanted to get close to Poseidon to stop, but she could not get close due to the powerful spatial power. All she could do was worry. She had thought that Poseidon's test was just a small gesture. She did not expect him to use his killer move right from the start. Poseidon, are you crazy? Even if Yang Qing is not the Hades of the past, he is still one of us. Don't tell me you want us to lose another one of our remaining 12? Poseidon's majestic voice contained a hint of disdain. Aphrodite, that is your naive thinking. Even if he has Hades' divinity, I think he is still far from being able to replace Hades. Kristen's pretty face was pale. She looked helpless as she bit her lower lip. She did not know what to do. She could only shake her head and hope that Yang Qing could break through on his own. Poseidon's deep voice pierced through space as he looked at Yang Qing, who had not been able to break through. Now, do you still think that the power of the Protoss space law is not as strong as that perverted Huaxia? Hearing this question, Yang Qing almost vomited 3 liters of blood on the spot. This old man had used such a powerful trump card just because he had doubted Poseidon's claim that the space law was not a threat. Seeing that Yang Qing did not speak, Poseidon said again, "If you still don't believe me, you can try. If you can break through my attack, I will admit that Huaxia's true inner force is slightly stronger. Don't think that just because you defeated the useless Ares, you can really become the successor of Hades. In my opinion, you are still far from that. If you admit defeat now and admit your mistake, I'll let you suffer less since the previous Hades chose you." Originally, Yang Qing wanted to save his life and admit defeat. Although he did not use his full strength, even if he did, he might not be able to defeat his opponent. There was no need for him to waste his effort. But now when he heard this disdainful tone, it was obvious that he was ridiculing him for being blind and not knowing how to appreciate favors. Instantly, the arrogance in Yang Qing's heart was aroused. Damn it, I have never been afraid of death since I was born. Initially, he had admitted defeat because he still had women to support at home, but now it seemed that he had no choice but to let those women down. Heh, you want me to admit defeat? I'm not going to admit it. At most, I'll play reincarnation today. You chef. If I'm afraid of you, I'll be a fish on your chopping board. Yang Qing looked up to the sky and laughed. He no longer held back and activated all the true core energy in his dantian. The majestic and vast true core energy gushed out from his body like mercury, and the Milky Way flowed backwards. Yang Qing's entire body seemed to have become an explosive point condensed from true core energy. The muscles and blood vessels in his body swelled up, and even his body's height increased by a notch. Blue veins appeared on his temples, and Yang Qing's eyes gradually revealed a scarlet color, mixed with wisps of golden light. Ah! Yang Qing let out a painful roar. He felt his meridians swell up like never before. Because of the true core energy flowing recklessly, he had never used all his strength before. Many of his blood vessels burst open, and threads of blood shot out. But even so, the terrifying recovery ability of the endless resolve restoration scripture allowed Yang Qing's body to quickly recover from the rapid damage. Do you think you can break free like this? Poseidon sensed the repulsive force within the sphere. The blue light in his eyes grew brighter, and a few more layers of space appeared in front of him. Between the towering seawater, there was a faint glimmer of brilliant starlight. It was the trace of the stars of the universe revealed after the space sphere was torn apart. In the violent quantum turbulence, Yang Qing was like a traveler stumbling in the snow. He took a step forward against the strong wind and snow storm that was coming from all directions. This step was like a thunderbolt. Kristen, who was watching this battle from afar, was shocked. A shock wave formed by true core energy spread out from under Yang Cheng's feet. It spread out and swept away the crazy quantum turbulence around him. Yang Chen didn't want to think about it anymore. All that was left in his mind was a violent thought: fight. Hysterically, Yang Cheng's body was wrapped in a thick layer of true core energy. He turned into a long rainbow and crashed into the space sphere that was spiraling in both directions. It was like a high-speed cutting machine. The moment a small metal ball collided with it, sparks flew everywhere. Boom, boom, boom. Muffled rumbles of thunder reverberated in the sky. Blue and purple lightning bolts shuttled through the void. Yang Qing felt as if his body was about to split open. He knew that Poseidon would not be able to easily block this attack. He was definitely trying his best. Poseidon's expression turned serious. It was as if he had returned to tens of thousands of years ago, when he fought against the ancestors of Hongmeng. Using true core energy to break through the surface was something he was very familiar with. The space sphere had reached its limit, but Yang Qing was still trying to break through it. It looked like he was about to break out of the tornado. Humph! Poseidon snorted. Blue light flashed in his eyes. Seeing that his attack had been broken, he simply pulled the spherical space sphere away. Yang Qing felt Aunt Zhou relax. The surrounding space instantly returned to a stable state. He knew that Poseidon was running out of energy. He did not care about the consequences. He used his true core energy to teleport a few feet away from Poseidon and threw a punch. Poseidon had no intention of dodging. He threw a punch as well. However, before his punch could touch Yang Qing, a blur appeared in front of him. Yang Qing's heart sank. As soon as he touched it, he cursed inwardly. The fist that was filled with surging true core energy collided with Poseidon's fist that was condensed with more than 100 layers of space sphere. His true core energy could not break through such a high-density space sphere in a short period of time. Instead, it was trapped within, as if it had sunk deep into the ground and could not break free. Poseidon smiled coldly. "I'll show you the difference between us." Space explosion. Without waiting for Yang Chen to save himself, the high-density spatial energy caused a terrifying explosion. It was as if hundreds of space spheres had exploded at the same point, and all of them had gathered around Yang Cheng's hand. This was an application of the space law that Yang Qing could not have imagined. It allowed the layers of space sphere to collide with each other and cause an explosion. This was like the most primitive principle of an atomic bomb. Because of this, it was far more powerful than an atomic bomb made by humans. Yang Cheng's face began to contort. His eyes were bloodshot as he screamed in pain. The pain he had never felt before made Yang Qing feel that his hand was being torn apart by an indescribable force. He let out a dry cry as sweat poured down his face like a waterfall. Poseidon looked a little surprised. This kind of destructive power is not enough to completely destroy your arm. Your body's strength should not only be caused by the divine light. Looks like the cultivation method you practice with Huaxia is also quite magical. Interesting. Stop talking nonsense. Yang Qing did not know what he was talking about, but the unwillingness in his heart made his brain not listen to him. Thump, thump. His heart began to beat violently. Yang Cheng's eyes gradually became bloodshot, and his soul began to tremble. A familiar feeling gradually invaded Yang Cheng's remaining rationality. After the divine light shone on him, that perverted side effect was going to break out again? He had always thought that after he entered the consummate Xiantian stage and then the deity transformation stage, his bloodthirsty madness had been completely cured. But now Yang Chen realized that it wasn't really cured, but he had been subconsciously suppressing it with his cultivation. Now that he had used up all the true yuan in his body, he naturally didn't have much energy to suppress the disease. In addition, because he was unwilling to give up, it produced an incomparably strong hostility. In the past, the side effect of the divine light that would gradually control his body after killing people was showing up again. The murderous aura had solidified like the claws of a demon. The ethereal force around Yang Cheng's body had initially had a faint golden glow, but now it was like black silk with a few wisps of scarlet heat. Poseidon could not help but feel a chill in his heart. Such a strong evil aura. No wonder Hades gave the godhood to you. You are very similar to him in this aspect. Get lost. Yang Qing lowered his head and gritted his teeth. His gums even began to bleed. Get lost? Haha. Do you think that the evil aura from killing people will really work on me? I only have control of one of your arms now. If you still refuse to admit defeat, I don't mind letting your entire body be baptized by the dimensional explosion. Poseidon snorted coldly. Yang Qing no longer had time to care about what he was saying. He panted heavily and said hoarsely in pain, "Get lost. Get lost. It's dangerous. If you don't leave now, it'll be too late." Chapter 743. Hundreds of nautical miles away, Christine was anxious, but she couldn't get close to the center of the terrifying battlefield. She kept cursing Poseidon for being too heartless and hated Yang Qing for not being flexible. Why didn't he just admit defeat? Did he really think that Poseidon was on the same level as Ares? At this moment, two godly auras suddenly flew over from the east. Two figures, one red and one blue, flashed. They were the handsome siblings, Stern and Alice. The two had just received the news not long ago that the Treaty of Gods had been broken and the structure of the world was threatened. Moreover, it was Yang Qing, the new Pluto. Naturally, they didn't dare to delay and rushed over as soon as possible, but they were still one step too late. Looking at the violent spatial faults and quantum currents in the sea ahead, Stern didn't have time to greet Christine. "Aphrodite, what's going on? Why did Neptune attack?" Seeing the siblings, Christine's eyes lit up with a glimmer of hope. "Apollo, you guys came just in time. Hurry up and stop Neptune." Yang Qing said something that he didn't want to hear, saying that he wanted to show Yang Qing the true power of the law of space. Now that they're fighting, Yang Qing won't admit defeat. If this goes on, even if Yang Qing doesn't reincarnate, he'll still lose his limbs. "What?" Alice rubbed the back of her neck. "Hades, that guy, does he really think that he's strong enough after fighting that idiot Ares? What's the point of saying this? You two together might be able to stop Neptune. Hurry up. Aren't you friends with Yang Qin too?" Kristen was really anxious now, and she was exasperated. Stern let out a long sigh and gripped the void with a solemn expression. Helios. A crimson fire dragon coiled around Stern's hand and condensed into a platinum longbow. "I can only try my best. Neptune is stronger than us, and the spatial pressure inside is too great. We can't get close easily." Stern drew his longbow, and a flaming arrow condensed into a blazing golden arrow. The boundless heat elements caused space to distort and dance. As Stern continued to compress and compress space, the converging power became more and more terrifying. At the same time, at the core of the battle, the spiritual energy around Yang Cheng's body began to clamor irregularly, as if it was going to break free from Yang Cheng's body at any time and flow through space. Go, go! Yang Qing used the last of his rationality to suppress his madness. Seeing that Poseidon was still in a stalemate with him, he painfully uttered the last few words. Poseidon started to realize that Yang Qin wasn't acting normally. He wasn't bluffing. Danger? What danger? Speak clearly. Halfway through his sentence, Poseidon's expression changed as if he had sensed something unbelievable. Rumble. Rumble unknowingly, the rolling sound of thunder had started to enter their ears from above the vast sky. This thunder was unusual. It sounded like the roar of an ancient beast, or a call from the depths of hell. It carried with it a sound wave that could shake one's soul. However, this sound wave was only within a few miles of where Yang Qing was. It was strange. Poseidon's face showed a trace of fear. Yang Qing could no longer hear what Poseidon was saying. Yang Qing, who had completely fallen into an uncontrollable state of madness, only knew that the spiritual energy in his body was more than twice as strong as before. It was as if the most basic energy had exploded from a desperate situation. His hand, which had not been able to break free from Poseidon's high-pressure spatial power, suddenly twisted. Bang! The sound of metal scraping against metal was heard. The distorted space was completely shattered into pieces. Poseidon was completely stunned. He could not believe that Yang Qing, who had not been able to resist him just a moment ago, had inexplicably increased his strength. The density of his spiritual energy was completely different from before. Although this level of spiritual energy was not enough to make him feel afraid, where did this explosive power come from? Yang Qing's crimson eyes glowed as he met Poseidon's blue eyes. With a tinge of pain, he raised his leg and kicked Poseidon's chest. Poseidon was so shocked that he did not have the time to put up a proper defense. He felt a wave of innate ether that was several times stronger than before. With a muffled groan, his body flew backwards like a bullet of light. His internal organs were in chaos. Poseidon roared in anger and flew more than 100 nautical miles away before he could stabilize his body. But when he stood still, Poseidon realized that although the kick was powerful, it was mostly just to kick him away, not to injure him. Was he trying to run away? Why? At the same time, on the other side, Stern, who had used the artifact Helios to create a long golden flame arrow, released his bowstring. A long red flame pierced through the night sky, tearing through the thin space like paper. With an unstoppable momentum, it shot straight towards the center of the quantum flow. It was impossible for this long arrow to hurt Poseidon and Yang Qing because it was not very fast. Its biggest use was to distract the two of them so that the battle would stop. However, before the golden flame arrow could reach the two of them, there was a dazzling change in the dark clouds in the sky. To everyone's astonishment, the dark clouds had formed a whirlpool, and in the center of the whirlpool, thunder and lightning flashed. He watched helplessly as a bluish-silver bolt of lightning with a disdainful might crashed down like a flood dragon diving into the sea. A few seconds later, the thunderous roar reached everyone's ears. The sky seemed to be dyed with a layer of blue light because of the blue lightning. In that instant, brilliant sparks bloomed between the sea and the sky. Be it Christine, the Cromwell siblings, or even Poseidon who had been kicked away earlier, they all understood what was going on at that moment. The moment the mighty godly thunder fell, it swallowed the golden flame arrow that Stern had condensed with a huge amount of divine spatial power. It did not even cause the slightest ripple. Yang Qing! Christine let out a shrill cry, tears flowing from her eyes. She had thought that with Apollo's godly arrow, she could drag Yang Qing out, but who would have thought, brother, is it Cultivator Huasia's 9 heavenly thunder tribulation? Alice asked in a daze, somewhat doubtful. However, Stern nodded solemnly. You're right, it's the 9 heavenly thunder. This should be the first round of Tai Ching heavenly thunder. But wasn't he only at the connate great perfection the last time we saw him? How did he suddenly enter the soul formation stage, and now he's at the tribulation stage? Alice asked in confusion. What are you guys talking about? What's the point of saying all this now? Yang Qing doesn't know anything about cultivation at all. How can he survive after being struck by the 9 heavenly thunder tribulation? Christine said with a sobbing tone. No, I have to save him. With that, Kristen charged into the sea shrouded in thunderclouds. Alice stepped forward and grabbed Christine's hand, stopping her and shouting, Aphrodite? Are you crazy? That's the 9 heavenly thunder. The strongest heavenly thunder. With your strength, you'll be seriously injured if you get close. Even Zeus and Athena wouldn't dare to fight it head-on. If you go like this, you'll be courting death. Don't even think about reincarnation. But, Diana, you guys know that tens of thousands of years ago, those guys at the tribulation stage used magic treasures to protect themselves, but their souls were still destroyed. Yang Qing doesn't have anything at all, he. At this point, Christine couldn't help but cry. Stern sighed in a low voice. Really, why didn't he comprehend the law of space, instead of focusing on Huaxia's cultivation? This is against the law of the universe. The more talented one is, the easier it is to be destroyed by the heavenly thunder tribulation. Why bother now? I'm afraid he doesn't even have a chance of reincarnation. In other words, he didn't think that Yang Qing could be saved. At this moment, deep in the thunderclouds, flashes of lightning and fire began to intertwine. Another Tai Ching heavenly thunder was about to fall, and at this moment, a figure flashing with blue light suddenly broke into the thunderclouds from afar. Stern's eyes lit up and then he said in shock, "It's Poseidon? He's going to help Yang Qing block the heavenly thunder? How is that possible? Even if Poseidon is stronger than us, he won't be able to block the heavenly thunder. No, if it's just one with his strength, he might be able to block it. Two, it'll be difficult." Stern gritted his teeth and said to Alice, who was beside him, "My dear, let's go. Since the heavenly thunder is about to fall, it means that Hades is not dead yet. If Hades doesn't die from the first heavenly thunder, then we can block the second. He might be able to recover and survive." Alice nodded. Instantly, the two of them turned into two beams of light, red and blue. They broke through the thunderclouds with divine might, and arrived behind Poseidon. In Poseidon's hand, there was a glowing trident. It was simple and unadorned, but one could faintly hear the sound of the tide accompanying the trident's cry. "Don't drag me down. Don't blame me if you get hit until you reincarnate," Poseidon said coldly. "Why, have you thought it through? I thought you really wanted to kill Hades." Stern laughed. "I don't care if he lives or dies. But since he pushed me away before the heavenly thunder tribulation, I can't owe him a favor," Poseidon said. "I know you're stubborn, forget it, hurry up and block it." Stern laughed bitterly, but in his heart, he cursed. Why did you force him into a corner just now, to the point where he unleashed all his energy and attracted the heavenly thunder tribulation? If it wasn't for Yang Chen's desperation to reveal his true cultivation, the divine lightning wouldn't have struck him so abruptly. However, it was useless to think about this. They could no longer care about Yang Qing, who did not know what was going on. With Poseidon in the lead, the three of them activated the law of space at the same time and created nearly 1,000 spatial barriers in the path of the heavenly thunder tribulation. The entire sky shrouded by the thunderclouds had turned into a forbidden zone where countless turbulent quantum layers wreaked havoc. Dazzling stars and all kinds of electric sparks intersected. The whistling wind blades even carried hailstones and knife-like fragments. The trident in Poseidon's hand exploded with a bluish-gold brilliance. With a roar, the tip of the trident shot out 3 beams of bluish-white light. The beams broke through the stacked spatial barriers without any resistance. Instead, they gathered all the parallel spaces around them. Chapter 744. As the beam of light grew stronger, the 1,000 layers of parallel space began to solidify. Looking from below, the light of the godly lightning could not penetrate the barrier at all. Boom! With a muffled sound wave that shook the heavens and earth, the second Tai Ching heavenly lightning tribulation landed on the space barrier. Alice was overjoyed. It worked? No. Stern and Poseidon denied it at the same time. Their faces were inexplicably ugly. **T. The space barrier, which was formed by the combined power of the three of them, began to shake violently the moment it came into contact with the godly lightning. Countless spatial cracks appeared on the barrier. "Let's go, there's nothing we can do," Poseidon said through gritted teeth. Ignoring the two behind him, He took the lead and flew away from the scene. Stern did not care about Alice's shock. He grabbed his sister's hand and teleported away from the sea. The moment the three of them left, the space barrier in midair was like steel and concrete being pierced by a diamond drill. At the same time, the dazzling lightning once again pierced into the sea. In an instant, the sea and sky lit up again. It was as bright as day, but also like the light of the polar regions, ethereal and illusory. Hundreds of nautical miles away, Poseidon's face was gloomy. His eyes were like an eagle's as he stared straight at the sea where Yang Qing was. Stern cursed and said hatefully, "Damn it, how is this possible? Even if it's the 9 heavenly lightning tribulation, this is only the first round of 3 Tai Ching heavenly lightning. Can the 3 of us not even withstand one?" Poseidon shook his head. "No, even the 9 heavenly lightning tribulations have different levels. The more powerful the technique, the more powerful the heavenly lightning. The heavenly lightning we saw tens of thousands of years ago was at least 30 to 40% weaker than the heavenly lightning we saw today. Unless Athena used the Aegis shield, no one would be able to withstand it." Poseidon shook his head. Christine, who was standing not far away, stood there mournfully, unable to hear anything. She stared blankly at the light curtain filled with the power of the divine thunder in the distance. She murmured, unable to believe that it was real. That Yang Qing, Alice's usual seductiveness was nowhere to be seen. She leaned into her elder brother's embrace sorrowfully, not daring to continue watching. Stern put his arm around his sister's shoulders. "There's still one more godly thunder. After the thunder tribulation, we'll go find him immediately." There was a hint of sadness in his words. At this moment, Yang Qing, who had already fallen into the sea under the thunderclouds, did not have the leisure to consider the situation outside at all. Before he kicked Poseidon away, Yang Qing had felt a majestic aura lock onto him. Although he did not know what it was, Yang Qing had a premonition that the ominous feeling had finally come true after he unleashed all of his power. Every time he went berserk due to the side effects of the divine light, he would unleash all of his hidden strength. In other words, all of his cultivation would be unleashed, instead of reserving some of his strength to suppress the violence in his brain. At this moment, he was truly unleashing all of his strength. As for why his last bit of rationality still made him kick Poseidon away, perhaps it was because of the pride in his heart, or perhaps it was his last bit of stubbornness. Even if that old bastard Poseidon died because of him, he would be the one to destroy him, not the other way around. Not long after Yang Qing kicked Poseidon away, he could no longer control his body. Inner force gushed out of his body, causing his blood vessels to expand to their limit. A painful scream came from Yang Qing's throat, like the sound of grinding gears. As the dark clouds swirled, the godly thunder descended. Yang Qing's inner force was like a rubber ball that had been squeezed to its limit, trying to resist. He aimed at the godly thunder in the sky and met it head-on. However, the true origin energy in his entire body was still too inferior to the divine lightning. Yang Qing felt as if all the inner force in his body had been sucked out in a short span of 3 seconds. Even his blood was being squeezed out of his capillaries. The blue godly thunder paused for a moment, then finally engulfed Yang Qing's entire body. Yang Qing could no longer understand what pain was. His entire soul felt like it was in hell, and he wanted nothing more than to die. This was an indescribably tragic state. Even the pain he had to endure when he was a child and was used as a biochemical experiment subject was 100 times easier than this. The power of the godly thunder was not only harmful to the physical body, but also to the soul. Even if he wanted to abandon his physical body and reincarnate in a parallel universe, Yang Qing knew that he could not escape. Before the godly thunder even touched his clothes, they had already turned to ashes. After Yang Qing was struck by the godly thunder, he fell into the icy cold sea. The seawater covered his entire body. The power of the godly thunder penetrated the seawater and penetrated all of Yang Cheng's cells. In a short period of time, his cells were continuously torn apart, and his entire body began to explode into a paste. If an ordinary cultivator had encountered such Tai Ching heavenly thunder, his soul would have been destroyed and he would have disappeared without a trace. However, Yang Cheng's body had been exposed to the divine light, and he had been nourished and strengthened by the endless resolve restoration scripture day and night for so many years. It was already beyond the imagination of an ordinary cultivator at the soul-forming stage or the crossing calamity stage. The most magical thing about the endless resolve restoration scripture was that it could be reborn from the brink of death. Therefore, when his body and divine sense were severely injured by the godly thunder, the endless resolve restoration scripture operated at a speed that was thousands of times faster than usual. The endless resolve restoration scripture turned the magnificent spiritual chi of heaven and earth, brought by the godly thunder, into the inner force in Yang Cheng's body. The tissues and divine sense that were damaged by the godly thunder were all repaired at an extremely fast speed. Although this speed was relatively slower than the destructive speed of the godly thunder, it managed to save the last bit of Yang Cheng's life. This short godly thunder only lasted for a few seconds. However, the pain that Yang Cheng had to endure was as long as a few centuries. In the godly thunder, his body was burnt continuously. His flesh and blood kept festering, but new flesh and blood kept growing. This was an unimaginable suffering. When the first Tai Ching heavenly thunder dissipated, Yang Cheng felt that he was not dead. At the same time, the violent side effects of the godly thunder also disappeared. This was because the godly thunder was the purest energy in the world. The violent and murderous aura was naturally dispelled instantly. Yang Cheng, who still had a trace of rationality, almost wanted to cry. How did I suddenly reach the crossing calamity stage? Cultivation was not about time. Some people might not be able to advance one level in hundreds of years, while some people could advance at a tremendous speed in a day. After all, it was about understanding, luck, and foundation. However, the speed of his advancement was too fast. It was obvious that Yen Sanyang had given him some pointers. Could it be that the mysteries of heaven and earth that he had comprehended were many times more profound than Yen Sanyang's? It was a good thing that his cultivation was fast. However, he had no experience at all. He didn't have any treasures to protect himself. How could he pass the heavenly tribulation? If Yang Cheng knew that his heavenly tribulation was not an ordinary heavenly tribulation, but the 9 heavenly thunder tribulation, which was the most difficult for cultivators to endure, he would vomit blood even if he didn't faint from anger. Initially, Yang Cheng thought that he had survived the disaster. However, the next moment, he felt that more godly thunder was about to strike him. Damn it! Does it want to strike me to death? Yang Cheng could feel that his body was recovering at a crazy speed. However, if another godly thunder struck him in a short period of time, he would really die. Moreover, his divine sense had not fully recovered yet. His chances of reincarnation were slim. Moreover, there were so many people waiting for him. If he died, what would happen to the women? To think that he could think of all this. Just as Yang Chen was feeling helpless, Poseidon, Apollo, and Diana built a barrier in the sky above the sea. Yang Cheng could vaguely feel the 3 of them appear. He thought that he was saved. However, the 3 of them only managed to hold on for a few seconds before the godly thunder broke through their defense and struck him again. Don't give me hope if you can't do it. The last bit of resentment left Yang Cheng without hope. After another round of baptism, Yang Chen couldn't stay awake anymore and completely lost his mind. His body was like a lone boat in the midst of the violent thunder and the tsunami. His skin was torn and his flesh was torn apart. If it wasn't for the barrier in midair which bought him a few seconds of time, allowing the endless resolve restoration scripture to recover more of his body and divine sense, This bolt of lightning would have been enough to destroy Yang Chen's soul. The thunderclouds in the sky did not disperse. Sensing that the person undergoing the heavenly tribulation had not been destroyed, it seemed to be a kind of anger from heaven. Instead, it circulated even faster and condensed into the third and final Tai Ching heavenly thunder, which was exceptionally majestic and awe-inspiring. Because Yang Cheng's divine sense had been sealed, he could not sense the terrifying aura outside. At this moment, although the endless resolve restoration scripture genuine vitality in Yang Cheng's body was not under Yang Cheng's command, it did not give up trying to protect its master. However, seeing that the next godly thunder tribulation was not something that could be withstood with its recovery and brute force, the endless resolve restoration scripture genuine vitality decided to put up a desperate fight. As if he had given up all resistance, the self-operating endless resolve restoration scripture withdrew all the true yuan protecting his body back into his dantian, leaving Yang Chen's body without any protection. He floated on the surface of the sea, ready to take the final blow of the divine lightning with his broken body. Chapter 745. Hundreds of nautical miles away, Poseidon, Christine, and the others could do nothing. They watched as the last bolt of Tai Ching heavenly lightning fell, and closed their eyes. Still in the bone-chilling seawater, Yang Cheng did not feel anything. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was dead. Other than the endless resolve restoration scripture in his energy center, there was no sign of life. Even his heartbeat had weakened. Boom, boom, boom. Finally, amidst the thunderclouds, a bolt of Tai Ching heavenly thunder that was several times thicker than before roared like a thunder dragon. It opened its bloody mouth and bit down at the tiny figure in the thousands of zhang of ocean. Under the blue light, the seawater was even more blue and deep than it was under the sky. The clouds were dyed with a layer of enchanting blue and white. It was like a brilliant silk covering the entire sky. A shock wave that was strong enough to uproot a small island swept out like a mighty wave. The wave was thousands of feet high, and it swept across thousands of nautical miles of the sea. At this moment, the Pacific Ocean was gray. At this moment, the Pacific Ocean was dead silent. More than a minute later, everything was calm again. The thunderclouds in the sky quietly dispersed, revealing a bright and clear moon, bright and flawless. The breeze carried a faint fishy smell of the sea. No one could have imagined that just a minute ago this place would have been so horrifying. It's over. Poseidon stood in the air expressionlessly. Christine, who was already kneeling and sobbing, suddenly raised her head and stared at Poseidon. It's all your fault. Poseidon, look at what you've done. Why did you fight without listening to an explanation? Even if you don't recognize him as Hades, do you really have to beat him up until he is reincarnated? What good does that do you? Poseidon took off his tall chef's hat, revealing a head of grayish-brown curly hair. He threw the hat into the distance with the sea breeze. Turning around, Poseidon said calmly, Aphrodite, watch your words. I'm just using my strength to make this guy understand that the laws of space are definitely not inferior to Huaxia's. As for what provoked the heavenly tribulation, it was his own cultivation. Since his cultivation has already broken through the peak of the soul formation stage and is about to enter the tribulation passing stage, there will be a heavenly tribulation sooner or later. What does this have to do with me? If you didn't force him to use his full strength, how could he have attracted the lightning tribulation so quickly? Christine said angrily. If he had admitted defeat earlier, this wouldn't have happened. Moreover, how would I know what level his cultivation has reached? It's simply ridiculous. All right. Alice hurriedly tried to mediate. We've known each other for tens of thousands of years. How can the two of you quarrel at a time like this? Quick, go check on Yang Cheng. What else can he do? After being struck by 3 bolts of Tai Ching heavenly lightning, even those experts from tens of thousands of years ago would have been heavily injured, even if they had magical treasures to protect themselves. He's lucky that he even has a chance to reincarnate, Poseidon said coldly. Christine glared at him fiercely. Without another word, she moved towards Yang Cheng's location in an instant. The stern siblings and Poseidon followed closely behind. When they arrived at the core of the heavenly lightning, the four of them were stunned speechless. They saw a charred body slowly floating on the ocean. The owner of this body was, without a doubt, Yang Cheng. However, his current condition was as if he had been tossed into an oven for a long time. Not only was his flesh torn, but his skin was also charred black. His body is still intact. Poseidon could not help but sigh in amazement. In fact, the four of them did not have much hope of finding Yang Cheng's body. The four of them had all experienced the Great War tens of thousands of years ago. Although they did not practice Hua Xia's cultivation method, they had seen pigs run. They had some understanding of Hua Xia's cultivation method. It was unbelievable that such a powerful heavenly lightning could not destroy Yang Cheng without any artifact. That's strange. Stern frowned. Why do I feel like there's no form of energy in his body? You're right. Poseidon's grayish-blue eyes flashed with doubt. He's still alive. He's not dead. However, his cultivation seems to have been destroyed, but that's not right. If his cultivation was destroyed by the heavenly lightning, then he would have become an ordinary person. However, his body is clearly repairing itself. Alice quickly pointed. Repairing? Everyone took a closer look. Indeed, although Yang Cheng's body was charred black, the tissues under his skin were rapidly regenerating and transforming at a speed visible to the naked eye. The dead cells and tissues were replaced with new ones. Because he was no longer wearing any clothes, this transformation was especially clear. What's going on? I can't feel the slightest energy fluctuation. How can his body recover? Is there some change in his body that we can't feel? Stern asked doubtfully. Kristen, on the other hand, couldn't wait any longer. She floated down to the surface of the sea and lifted Yang Chen's body into her arms, hugging him tightly. When she felt the pulse of Yang Cheng's body, Christine's eyes were filled with tears. She laughed and scolded in a low voice. You only know how to show off. Now you're suffering. Yang Cheng lay in the arms of the blonde beauty in a daze. Most of the skin on his face had faded away, revealing a new, fair face. His expression seemed to be very contented, without the slightest hint of pain. Christine looked at the familiar face and pursed her lips into a smile. You haven't become more handsome even after being struck by lightning. You're really unlucky. Stern and his sister also landed next to her. Looking at the unconscious Yang Cheng, they revealed puzzled expressions. However, they also smiled, feeling fortunate that this guy did not die. Aphrodite, don't tell me you've fallen for Hades. Why? Do you like fresh and tasty little brothers? Alice giggled and joked. Christine raised her eyebrows slightly. I'm not like you, Sister Artemis. I don't have a brother fetish. Humph. Alice wrinkled her nose and hugged the crook of her brother's arm. She acted like a helpless little bird, obviously disdainful of Christine's mockery. Stern laughed dryly and touched his sister's beautiful silver hair. By the way, there are only a few of us here. Except for Ares, the others don't seem to have awakened? Who knows? After all, this place is close to the United States. Maybe even if they awakened, they would be too lazy to come here. After all, with this heartless guy here, there's no point in coming all the way here. Christine glanced at Poseidon behind her, her tone rather sarcastic. Poseidon, on the other hand, looked at Yang Cheng in Christine's arms with a face full of suspicion. He seemed to be thinking hard about why such a magical state would appear. Aphrodite, where do you plan to take Hades? You can't just send him back to Hua Xia like this. Stern asked. Christine nodded. I'll take him to where I live. We'll talk about it when he wakes up. Then, the person who destroyed the American fleet, who exactly? Alice hesitated, not knowing what to say. It's not him. This time, it was Poseidon who spoke frankly. The way he uses the law of space is different from the person in the video. Moreover, his temperament is also different from the person in the video. Moreover, since he was willing to fight me with all his might, he can't be someone who is preparing any schemes, because he knows that he is no match for me. It's not him? Then who is it? Why does he look exactly like Hades? And he also knows the law of space. Aren't there only 12 of us left on Earth? Stern was puzzled. Poseidon shook his head. I don't know either. Christine gnashed her teeth in anger. Neptune! What do you mean? You clearly knew that it wasn't Yangqing, and yet you still beat him up like this. Poseidon glanced at her, as if he was too lazy to explain. Stern quickly tried to mediate. Aphrodite, take a break. It's been tens of thousands of years. Don't you know this guy's temper? Other than Zeus and Athena, he doesn't listen to anyone. He's like a block of wood. You should hurry up and take Yangqing to rest and clean up. He has no energy in his body right now. I really don't know how he managed to recover. I hope there aren't any abnormal side effects. Chapter 746. Hearing Stern's words, Christine sighed faintly. Now that she was hugging Yang Chen's body, she had the most direct feeling. Although Yang Chen's body was strangely recovering at a rapid speed, she couldn't feel the slightest bit of energy in his body. His spiritual power was so weak that he couldn't control the space laws at all. His true yuan was also completely scattered, as if he had never cultivated before. I hope his cultivation will recover. If he wakes up and finds that there is no energy in his body, I wonder if it will be too much of a blow. Kristen frowned sadly, but she did not think too much about it. After saying goodbye to Stern and Alice, she turned around and returned to North America. Watching Kristen leave, Stern hugged Alice and said, Neptune, I know you don't like Yangqing practicing Huaxia's techniques and think that it is disrespectful to the Protoss. But why do you have to do this? It has been so long, it is time to let go of your obsession. We can live on Earth and watch our human descendants continue to reproduce. The humans of Huaxia don't know that their ancestors had conflicts with us. They are innocent. When we signed the Treaty of Gods, we decided to take good care of this planet. This was our home. Why do we care if Hades practices the techniques of Earth, or if he has a deeper understanding of the law of space? Apollo, don't be too full of yourself. If I still wanted to revive the Protoss, I would not have chosen to be a chef. Poseidon turned around and looked at the boundless sea under the moon. I am only protecting the last bit of glory in my heart. As for this young man, I did not intend to completely destroy him. It is just that he does not know his own cultivation, and the 9 heavenly lightning tribulation has nothing to do with me. Stern smiled bitterly and shook his head. Do as you wish. We are leaving. With that, the siblings' figures flickered and disappeared into the night sky. Poseidon stood quietly for a long time before he took a step forward and disappeared from the sea. It was already early in the morning in Zhonghai. The moon was hanging high in the sky and everything was quiet. In a bedroom on the second floor of a bungalow, moonlight shone through the floor-to-ceiling windows on the balcony and onto the floor, refracting onto a beautiful figure curled up on the bed. The woman was wearing a silk nightgown, and her hair was scattered in front of her eyes. She sat on the cold floor with her legs bent, shivering from time to time. The woman held the cell phone in one hand. The light from the screen illuminated her fair and beautiful face, making it look especially pitiful. He had lost count of how many times he had called the same number. 10 times? 50 times? 100 times? Or more. Emotieni didn't know, and she didn't want to remember these numbers. She could only hear clearly that there was nothing else besides the beeping sound. A few hours had passed. From the time he hung up the phone to now, it was like being tormented by fire, making Emotieni cry. She tried to hold it in, but she cried again. At first, she thought that the man must have something urgent to do, so he didn't have time to answer the phone. But half an hour later, there was still no answer. She carefully paid attention to the movements in the room next to her. No one went out at all, and that person was clearly still in the room. But why didn't he pick up my call? Didn't he know that I had endless things to say to him? Why was it that at such a heart-wrenching time, when she was lonely and helpless, he couldn't even make a sound in her ears? The sound of sobbing came from Emotioni's nose. No matter how strong she was, when she found out that the man wasn't even willing to face her feelings, a woman's sensitive nerves couldn't take it anymore. After crying for a long time, as if all her tears had dried up, Emotioni fell weakly on the side of the bed. She looked haggard, and she fell asleep from exhaustion. Beijing, in the underground military research base. White lights made the entire space as bright as day. In the hall filled with all kinds of advanced scientific equipment, giant test tubes, and connecting pipes, Yen Buwen was wearing the same big white robe as his eyes were focused on a huge display screen. The various messy data displayed on the screen was enough to make a world-class biochemical research expert completely dumbfounded. All kinds of research data that was ahead of the entire era, other than Yen Buwen himself. Even if others studied it for a year or 3 years, they might not be able to find anything. Just as Yen Buwen was carefully thinking about some problems, a black graceful figure seemed to cut open a hole in the void, and from it, a clear and gentle footstep slowly descended, appearing behind the man. Yen Buwen realized that there was a cold aura emitting from the bottom of his heart, and an irresistible pressure slowly invaded his body from behind, causing his body to sink into a kind of stiffness. Slowly turning around, Yen Buwen finally saw the woman who broke into the secret laboratory without warning. Her black hair hung down to her hips, the beautiful face that he yearned for day and night, the elegant black lace dress that revealed 2 sections of white calves, like a black water lotus standing in the world, and a pair of eyes that were as deep as the stars were looking at him without the slightest emotion. "You. Why are you here?" Ecstasy surged in Yen Buwen's heart. Although his body didn't listen to him, he still tried his best to tidy up his messy hair, and his eyes were unwilling to move away from the woman's face for even a second. The woman's eyes slowly looked to the front left, at a row of giant tempered glass test tubes that were connected to the top and bottom. If there were other people present, they would definitely be indescribably shocked. It was because the biochemical liquid in these test tubes was actually the naked bodies of adult men, and these men were all exactly the same. Cloning. And it was a clone of one person. At the bottom of each giant test tube, there was a display screen that indicated the heart rate of the clone and other indicators, indicating that each clone was in a healthy state. Seeing the woman staring at the clones, Yen Buwen said proudly, "How is it? I didn't let you down, did I?" Yang Qing definitely didn't expect that he would become our most powerful weapon. Moreover, there are as many as you want. The woman coldly turned her head and glanced at him. "I told you before, don't touch Yang Qing before I gave you the order. You don't seem to understand me." Yen Buwen's eyes slightly evaded, and he said, "I just using the experimental body to test the use of the space laws after the fusion of the divine deity." "Humph," the woman said disdainfully. "Yen Buwen, don't play tricks in front of me. If you want to test the use of the space laws, there are many ways. Why do you have to destroy the American fleet that Yang Qing just came into contact with?" "I just... Yen Buwen still wanted to explain, but before he could finish, he let out a mournful scream. The woman didn't seem to have done anything, but Yen Buwen's legs were shattered into pieces and blood spurted out from them. The bones in his legs were completely shattered, and the lower half of his white robe was dyed dark red. Yen Buwen lay limply on the ground. The heart-wrenching pain made his face pale. On the ground, the scarlet color gradually spread. The woman didn't even look at him. "This is just a small punishment for you. You can heal yourself anyway. Just treat it as a reminder." Yes. "I know I was wrong." Yen Buwen broke out in a cold sweat as he spoke with great difficulty. His eyes were filled with deep fear and unwillingness. No matter how he modified his body, in front of this woman, it was as useless as an ant. The woman strolled toward the giant test tubes. Her eyes were filled with a strange splendor, and the corners of her mouth curled up into a thought-provoking smile. Her evil beauty was enough to make anyone intoxicated and unable to wake up. Yen Bowen, you have to remember, I didn't give you so many divine deities to play with. If you don't wait for me to prepare them and waste any divine deity, then I will be very angry. The woman suddenly turned around and stared coldly at Yen Bowen, who was lying in a pool of blood. Let me tell you, there are smart people in this world. If you really think that you are that valuable to me, then give up on me as soon as possible. If I can make you, I can destroy you in an instant. If you continue to scheme against Yang Qing because of your little thoughts, and end up alerting the enemy, you don't have to continue your experiment. I will find someone to replace you. Yen Bowen crawled in front of the woman. He didn't care about his bleeding legs and heavily kowtowed to the ground. Chapter 747. Los Angeles, California, United States. The morning glow dyed the entire seaside international metropolis with a faint golden glow, like a pearl embedded in the west coast of North America. This was a fascinating metropolis. It was not like New York in the north, which was like a reinforced concrete forest that never saw the light of day. It was also not like Miami in the south, where the scorching air burned with passion and made people forget themselves. Here, one could feel the surging pulse of the city, as well as the quiet breath of the city. It was like a wild and seductive woman, but also like a graceful and dignified saintess of the world when she was quiet. And it was in the west of such a world-famous metropolis that there was Beverly Hills on the coast of the Pacific Ocean. One of the world's few super-rich areas, the world-famous Beverly Hills, was located here. Many people mistakenly thought that Beverly was just the name of a small area, but in fact, it was a city with an elected mayor, police, medical, and fire department. It was also because of the complete facilities that it was like a city within a city, coupled with the beautiful scenery and convenient geographical location, that Hollywood stars and rich people from all over the world were willing to live here. At this moment, in a mansion that occupied the highlands of Beverly Hills, in a brightly decorated bedroom on the second floor, a naked Asian man was casually lying on the soft white bed. He didn't know how long he had slept, but when a ray of morning light shone on the man's feet, it warmed his skin and made him feel a little itchy. Slowly, the man opened his eyes and clicked his tongue in confusion. He stared blankly at the dome decorated with colorful patterns for a while, as if he had thought of what exactly had happened. Only then did he let out a long sigh. "Dear Yang Qing, you're finally awake. I thought you were going to stay on my bed and never get up." A blonde woman wearing a cinnamon-colored chiffon lace round-neck dress leaned against the door with bare feet, smiling charmingly at Yang Qing on the bed, but her eyes revealed a bit of unconcealable joy. The corner of Yang Qing's mouth twitched slightly. He slowly got up from the bed and sat on the edge of the bed. He looked down at his crotch. His little brother was exposed to the air. He couldn't help but curl his lips and say, "Kristen, do you have to be so vulgar? Why don't you let me wear a pair of pants? This is my house in Beverly, and there's no man in the house. Where would I get any clothes for you to wear? Why, do you want to wear sexy underwear?" Christine asked mischievously. Yang Qing rolled his eyes and scratched the back of his head. He was about to say something when he suddenly remembered something and slapped his forehead. "Oh no. What happened? When I went out, I was very quiet. My family didn't know what happened to me. It's already morning in America, so wouldn't it be almost a day in China?" Yang Qing sighed. "It's over, it's over. My phone is also in the room. My mother and the others are worried to death." Christine chuckled and said, "Don't worry, Mr. Yang Qing, I already guessed that you weren't that smart. Yesterday afternoon, I already called Huaxia and told them that you came to the United States to help me. Miss Lin also asked me to take good care of you. TSK, it seems that the relationship between husband and wife is much better now. It's really commendable progress. Really? Yang Qing was delighted. He didn't have to worry anymore. He believed that after Lin Ruoxi knew, she would also help him arrange other things. He didn't have to rush back. After all, the previous matter hadn't been completely resolved. Christine looked at the man's silly smile and was speechless for a while. She stopped smiling and asked, "How do you feel? When you first came back, your whole body was black. I helped you wash for a long time before it was clean. Although your body seems to have recovered now, but my true inner force is all gone, and my spiritual power is not as good as before, right?" Yang Qing smiled easily. "I just checked my body. Don't worry, I'm very healthy. You can still laugh." Christine raised her voice a few octaves and said unhappily, "Why don't you think about it? You have so many enemies. Now that your cultivation is suddenly gone, and your spiritual power is not enough to control the law of space, what if someone comes to trouble you?" Yang Qing smiled awkwardly and said, "But I can't cry. It's already very good to be alive, hee. I really can't be bothered with you." Kristen shook her head and shouted towards the outside, "Sally, bring the clothes over and help Mr. Yang change." A woman's crisp response came from outside. Soon, a white girl with beautiful light brown curly hair in a black and white maid dress came into the room with a pile of brand new men's clothes. Seeing Yang Cheng's naked appearance, Sally blushed a little shyly and didn't dare to look anymore. She lowered her head and bowed to Yang Qing, and then began to tidy up the clothes for Yang Qing. Christine said, "Put on your clothes and come downstairs for breakfast. I have a lot to say to you. I'll go down first." Yang Qing didn't have much time to care about Christine at this time. His eyes were all on the shy white girl in front of him. This maid dress was not uncommon, but it was the first time he saw an American girl wearing it. Although the history of maid dress originated from the 19th century British maid apron dress, but in modern times, it was the patent of some Japanese fetishes. Sally looked like she was in her 20s. She must have been hired by Christine as a maid right after graduating from college. After all, with Christine's status, even if she was a slave, there would probably be people who would fight to the death. Sally had a round and cute face. Her figure was relatively petite among American women, but her breasts and buttocks were more exaggerated than those of Asian women. She was wearing a maid costume with a black background and a white skirt with lace edges. In particular, a delicate and deep cleavage could be seen near the low neckline of the dress. "Mr. Yang, would you like to wear pants or clothes first?" Sally saw Yang Qing kept staring at her chest, and asked with some fear. If it was outside, Sally would definitely go up and slap this pervert. But this was the guest of her master, Christine. For the first time, a person who could sleep in the queen's boudoir. She was just a little maid. How could she dare to disobey? Yang Qing retracted his gaze and smiled foolishly. "Clothes first, clothes." As soon as the words came out of his mouth, he almost said it in Chinese, but then he realized that it was American English. Sally immediately nodded, and nimbly helped Yang Chen put on a white Versace shirt with light stripe. Professionally, she buttoned up the buttons one by one, and tidied up the collar. When Sally was about to pick up the men's underwear and put it on for Yang Qing stopped her. Your name is Sally, right?" Yang Qing asked with a smile. Sally nodded nervously. "Yes, Mr. Yang. Can you do me a favor? As you know, I just woke up from a weak state and my body is a little unnatural." Yang Qing was very serious, like an elder talking to his niece. Sally's greenish-brown eyes widened in confusion. "Mr. Yang, please speak." "Okay, Sally. Can you help me test if this organ of mine is normal?" Yang Qing's face was serious. He reached out and pointed at the spear between his legs. At this moment, the spear was already standing upright. Its size, its thickness, was really eye-catching. Sally did not notice it for a moment. When her eyes met the big guy, she immediately covered her mouth in panic. Her face was pink, and she turned her head away in fear. Mr. Yang, you want to. Although Sally had a few boyfriends, she was not very open in terms of sex. Ever since she became a maid in Christine's house, she had not touched a man. Yang Cheng's sighs made little Sally at a loss. However, Yang Cheng did not look ashamed at all. He sat upright with his legs open, making the pole in the middle particularly clear. Faintly, the top of his head began to emit heat. Sally, I don't mean that. I will never taint the innocence of an innocent girl. You don't know, but I was seriously injured before. I'm worried that I lost the ability to carry on the family line as a man. So, I just want you to do me a favor. Try to see if my launch system is in good condition. I just need to fire a cannon. I'm not asking you to do anything, Yang Chen said solemnly. Sally wanted to go up and strangle this shameless guy. How is this a VIP? He is more of a beast than a beast. A thick-skinned beast. However, Yang Cheng was so righteous and earnest. As a maid, Sally did not dare to easily refuse. Then I'll use my hand to test it out for Mr. Yang. Sally wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Anyway, it wasn't a rare thing. It didn't matter if she used her hand on a stranger. Maybe she could get Master Kristen's approval. It would be great if she could get a big bonus. And? Yang Cheng shook his head. Sally, this is too unfair to you. It's so tiring to use your hand. How can I bear to let you test it for me with your hand? What if I can't come out in half an hour? Then wouldn't your hand be so sore? Sally was stunned. Did I misunderstand Mr. Yang? Is that not what he meant? Then, what does Mr. Yang want to do? Sally asked with her head tilted. Yang Cheng licked his lips and laughed. Use your mouth. My mouth is soft and warm. It will come out faster. Chapter 748. Sally opened her small mouth. This time, she didn't even have the thought of scolding this guy in her mind. This guy was not human at all. Yang Cheng, however, raised his eyebrows happily. Sally, hurry up. Your master is waiting for me to have breakfast after I'm done. You're such a good girl, agreeing to everything. I'll get Kristen to give you a bonus later. Sally wanted to die. He was torturing her in a roundabout way. If he had told her to do it with her mouth, it would have been easier to accept it directly. After all, in the upper class, not to mention maids, even ordinary female celebrities were the playthings of those rich people. How could she really resist? After combing her curly hair to the back of her head, Sally squatted down and lied between Yang Cheng's legs. Although she was very unwilling, she still smiled at Yang Cheng in a professional manner. Then, she opened her pink lips and sucked. Oh. Hiss. Okay. Use your tongue. Yes, right there. Nothing could be better than this radiant early morning. After more than half an hour, the exhausted Sally opened her mouth and gasped for breath. She sat on the floor softly, unable to close her red lips easily. After sending out the goods that he had held back for a few days, Yang Cheng happily put on his underwear and trousers. Then, he blew Sally a kiss and happily walked out of the room and went downstairs. In the bright and elegant hall on the first floor, Kristen was sitting at the dining table with a newspaper in her hand. Without looking back, Kristen chuckled and said, "It seems that you really don't have any sad emotions. Doing this to my maid as soon as you woke up is indeed your style." Yang Cheng pulled out a chair and sat down. He picked up a butter bread and took a bite. "Remember to give her $1 million as a reward." "Why should I give you a reward for playing with a woman?" Kristen put down the newspaper and curled her lips in dissatisfaction. "It's not like you don't have money. So stingy. Really, what does money mean to us? It's not easy for that girl. Just now, she was almost choked to death by my hundreds of millions of little brothers." Yang Cheng said with a pitiful expression. "Miss Lin is so great to be able to marry you." Kristen didn't want to continue this disgusting topic. She wanted to take a sip of milk, but when she saw the color of the milk, she frowned and put it down. Yang Chen proudly crossed his legs and looked at the huge glass window in the distance. Looking out, he could see the majestic mountain city outside of Beverly Hills. The wide view made him feel happy both physically and mentally. This place isn't bad. I'll get Ron to buy one next time and hire a few American girls in maid clothes, Yang Qing said in high spirits. Kristen snorted. There aren't any available, except for the houses near the mountain. I didn't say that I would buy it according to the rules. Even if I pointed a gun at their heads, they would still be willing to sell it for free, Yang Chen said indifferently. Yang Qing picked up a glass of orange juice and gulped it down. He patted his stomach and burped. By the way, Aphrodite, how much do you know about Huaxia's tribulation? How much do you know about the stages of soul formation and tribulation? I want to know. Hearing her name, Kristen became serious and asked, You've already experienced the first round of the 9 heavenly lightning tribulation. Do you really not know about this? Yang Qing smiled bitterly. If I knew, I wouldn't have used all my power to fight Poseidon. That feeling of being struck by lightning, I'd rather be reincarnated. Kristen sighed weakly. She lowered her head and pondered for a while, as if she was organizing her thoughts. After a long time, she said, Although we've all experienced the war between Huaxia and the Protoss tens of thousands of years ago, we didn't have a deep understanding of Huaxia's cultivation method. So, I can only give you a general explanation. Moreover, you seem to have some misunderstandings about the war between us and Huaxia's ancestors. Let me explain it to you in simple terms. As Kristen explained, some of the cultivation methods that Yang Qing had never heard from Yen Sanyang, as well as the real situation tens of thousands of years ago, finally appeared before Yang Qing's eyes. When the Protoss discovered that Mars was no longer viable, they migrated to Earth. Just as Yen Sanyang had said, they massacred a large number of primitive humans on Earth. From the Protoss point of view, since Earth was the new Protoss planet, there could only be one master. When they entered Huaxia's territory, the Huaxia's cultivators could no longer sit still and began to fight as equals. At that time, the Protoss led by the 12 main gods numbered in the tens of thousands. Now, there were only 12 of them left. At that time, Huaxia did not have Hongmeng yet, and there were tens of thousands of cultivators. Ordinary soul-forming stage cultivators, who had broken through to the Khanate full cycle, had different levels of cultivation. Some were strong, while others were only at the same level, unable to unleash much of their combat power. However, the Protoss were different. As long as they knew how to use the law of space, they would be much stronger than ordinary soul-forming stage cultivators. Because of this, the Protoss had the upper hand from the beginning. They planned to destroy the Huaxia's cultivators, then completely occupy Earth and develop it into a new Protoss planet. However, when the battle reached a critical juncture, the most powerful cultivators in the Crossing Calamity stage, who had been living in seclusion, suddenly appeared. With their strength, ordinary Protoss were no match for them at all. Even if they went up to them, their souls would be instantly destroyed. Among the 12 main gods, only Zeus, Athena, Poseidon, Hades, Apollo, and a few of the strongest main gods could fight against them. As for the ones who could really defeat these tribulation stage cultivators, only Zeus and Athena could. Zeus was powerful because of his ability to use the law of space, which was several times more profound than Poseidon and the others. His trump card was a divine artifact that only he could control, Thunderbolt. The power that Huaxia's cultivators feared the most in this world was Thunderbolt. When Zeus blasted open the door of Huaxia with an endless stream of thunderbolts, even the tribulation stage cultivators could only flee in panic, not daring to come into contact with his godly power. On the other hand, Athena's strength was on par with Zeus. As the only goddess of war who had 2 artifacts, the Aegis shield and the Pallas spear, she rarely used her artifacts against tribulation passing stage cultivators, and she never fell behind at all. This was because not only did she possess the supreme law of space, but she also possessed the most terrifying wisdom. Whenever Athena encountered an enemy, she could even use ordinary prophecy spells to predict her opponent's every move. As for her great prophecy spell, it was even more terrifying. Think about it, before you even make a move, every move that you make is within your opponent's expectations. No matter how hard you try to change it, your changes are actually the prophecy of the future. In this way, no matter how high your cultivation is, without absolute power, how can you win? As a result, after thousands of ordinary Protoss were killed and the ordinary soul-forming stage cultivators suffered heavy losses, the war reached its climax. The cultivators of Huaxia realized that no matter how hard they tried, even if they managed to stop the other Protoss, Zeus and Athena were like an unstoppable steel knife that pierced straight into their hearts. In desperation, a few of the most powerful tribulation stage cultivators lured Zeus and Athena to a primordial battlefield in Huaxia during a battle. After that battle, there was no news of Zeus. Only Athena, who seemed to be alerted by her prophecy spell, escaped in a panic. After Athena escaped, the Protoss then realized that in the primordial era, Huaxia had a group of ancestors whose cultivation was far above the tribulation stage. Although those ancestors had left Earth for an unknown period of time, they still left behind some relics from the primordial era. At that time, the cultivation techniques of the cultivators were also obtained from the primordial era. At the same time, the great divines of the primordial era also left behind a powerful formation. Those tribulation stage cultivators brought Zeus and Athena into the formation. After activating the eye of the formation, they tried to completely seal the two extremely strong opponents that they could not deal with. Unfortunately, Athena used the Pallas spear to break a gap in the formation and barely escaped before the formation's power was fully unleashed. Even so, Zeus, who was the only one who possessed the ultimate killing technique, lightning, could not return to the Protoss. The Protoss lost their strongest Zeus. Even with the undefeated Athena, they could no longer hold the absolute upper hand. After all, Athena could defeat the tribulation stage cultivators, but she could not use lightning to completely destroy the opponent like Zeus. If this stalemate continued, it was hard to guarantee that they would be ambushed by the cultivators of Huaxia and once again be sealed by the primordial divine formation. After such a stalemate, the Protoss discovered that due to the difference in the atmosphere on Earth and other reasons, their fertility rate was shockingly low. If this continued, even if they killed all the cultivators of Huaxia, they would still be heading towards destruction. And the only ones who could use the infinite reincarnation cycle were the 12 main gods who had comprehended the law of space to the main god realm. This meant that sooner or later, the Protoss on Earth would be wiped out until there were only 12 of them left. During this most difficult period for the Protoss, a few of the most powerful cultivators of Huaxia, who were at the tribulation stage, actually faced their second or third round of heavenly tribulations. What the group of cultivators could no longer regret was that the few strongest cultivators at the tribulation stage were all struck by the heavenly tribulations and disappeared from the universe, leaving not even a trace of their soul behind. The Protoss were suffering from the extinction of their race, and the cultivators of Huaxia did not know what to do because they had lost their pillar of support. In such a dire situation, it didn't matter who won or lost. It didn't matter anymore. Therefore, the remaining 11 of the 12 main gods, as well as the remaining cultivators of Huaxia who were at the tribulation stage, finally decided to stop the war and sign the Treaty of Gods. This treaty was actually two-way. The Protoss were not allowed to break the seal and use the law of space in a battle between non-Protoss. This was because it was too destructive to ordinary creatures on Earth, and it would also affect the evolution of creatures in the secular world, which was against the natural order of things. Of course, if it was against cultivators above the soul formation stage, it was a different matter. Those who violated the treaty would be sent into reincarnation by the other main god. As for Huaxia, They were not allowed to invade the territory outside of Huasia's territory, and they were not allowed to attack the Protoss for no reason. There were many rules and regulations, but in a practical sense, apart from restricting the Protoss from breaking the seal at will, Huaxia was suspected of giving in. After all, other than Huaxia's territory, the rest of Earth was under the control of the Protoss. This was also why, apart from Huaxia, the Protoss would appear in various countries and regions. It was not that Huaxia could not go, but that such a sad place was the opponent's home ground, and the Protoss were not willing to stay. Of course, in order to ensure the validity of the treaty, both sides had a special oath as a prerequisite. The Protoss oath was restricted by the law of space, and if they violated it, they would be completely unable to reincarnate. On the other hand, the cultivators of Huaxia were restricted by the law of heaven and earth. If they did not suffer the wrath of thunder, their cultivation would no longer be able to progress, and they would die of old age. Moreover, both sides had their own pride and dignity. At the end of the day, both sides wanted to save face, and they would not interfere with each other's affairs. They would only go against the treaty if they had nothing better to do. Hearing Christine's words, Yang Qing interrupted and asked, "Why do I feel that things won't go so smoothly? When the Treaty of Gods was signed, did both sides pass it unanimously? I don't think so. Based on Poseidon's temper, he doesn't seem like someone who would give in." Chapter 749. Of course not. Christine sighed and shook her head. Back then, there were 3 people who disagreed. Athena, Poseidon, and you, Hades. Ahem, not me, it was the previous one. Yang Qing smiled awkwardly. Christine snorted in displeasure, looking as if she was certain that it was him. Yang Qing touched his chin, a little embarrassed. Then he asked curiously, "During this process, why didn't I hear anything about the God Stone? Since the previous Hades, Ares, and Athena wanted it many times, where did it come from? What is it used for?" Christine sighed. "Didn't I say before that I don't know where the God Stone came from or what it's used for? That thing only appeared after the Treaty of Gods was signed. I only know that it should be closely related to our God race. Moreover, it does contain some possibility of reviving our God race. However, it is only a possibility. The most successful example of the use of the God Stone is you. If you don't have the divine light to improve your body, you won't be able to withstand the law of space, and you won't have the chance to inherit the divinity. As for other information about the God Stone, I don't know. With my strength, I can't compete for the God Stone. Most of the time, the God Stone is either missing or in the hands of Athena and Hades for research. Perhaps Athena knows the most about it. They definitely want to use the God Stone to revive the Protoss, but, apart from them, we don't have much confidence." Yang Qing pondered for a while and frowned. "Sigh, you haven't talked about the heavens' retribution yet." Christine picked up the glass of milk. She didn't feel disgusted anymore. She took a sip and continued, "What's the hurry? I was just about to say, in fact, the heavens' retribution was divided into different levels. There was a huge gap between the strengths of the soul formation stage experts. But for the tribulation stage experts, it didn't mean that they could definitely enter the tribulation stage just because their realm was high enough. The tribulation passing stage could be said to be the embodiment of a true powerhouse. This was because only when a cultivator's cultivation was recognized by the heavenly will of the universe would he have the opportunity to summon the heavenly tribulation and enter the tribulation passing stage. In other words, when one's cultivation level was high enough and had surpassed the soul formation stage, the heavenly tribulation would naturally descend. According to the strength of a cultivator's cultivation technique, which was also the degree of defying the heavens, the heavenly tribulations could be roughly divided into 3 types. All things in the world, there were positive and negative, there were yin and yang. Only when yin and yang converged could new things be formed. This was the so-called 3 forms of all things. The first type of heavenly tribulation was relatively the weakest and also the most common. It was the 3 Yang fire tribulation. There were 3 rounds of heavenly tribulation, and each round consisted of 3 rounds of heavenly tribulation: leaf fire, samadhi fire, and karmic fire. They descended from the sky and burned the cultivators. If they were the slightest bit careless, they would be turned into ashes. The second type of heavenly tribulation was relatively stronger, but it was already extremely rare. It was the 6 frost water tribulation. It also consisted of 3 rounds, and each round consisted of kuei water, ming water, and weak water. These 3 types of water pervasively invaded the cultivator's body and could even corrode the soul. Most geniuses in the tribulation passing stage would be completely corroded by the second round of Ming water. The third type was the most rare, and it was also the most powerful heavenly tribulation produced by the convergence of yin and yang. It was the 9 heavenly thunder tribulation. What a cultivator feared the most was undoubtedly the heavenly thunder. This heavenly thunder was much more terrifying than Zeus' thunderbolt, because it was the true heavenly thunder born from the convergence of yin and yang. The 3 rounds of heavenly thunder were divided into the Tai Ching heavenly thunder, Shang Qing heavenly thunder, and Yu Qing heavenly thunder. If this lightning tribulation was attracted, the cultivator must have cultivated some heaven-defying cultivation method. To put it bluntly, the heavens couldn't bear to watch any longer. It was obvious that this guy wanted to pierce through the heavens. Thus, the heavens exerted all their strength to blow this cultivator into smithereens. After explaining the 3 types of heavenly tribulations, Kristen continued, "Tens of thousands of years ago, we once saw 2 geniuses in the tribulation passing stage who encountered the 9 heavenly thunder tribulation. They were the 2 most powerful cultivators on Hua Xia's side. What they encountered was already the second round of Shang Qing heavenly thunder. Without any suspense, when the first heavenly thunder struck, they were all struck to death." Yang Qing swallowed and said with a stiff smile, "It can't be that bad. Why would I lie to you?" Kristen rolled her eyes at him. "Although I don't know much about Hua Xia's cultivation, I've seen more than the people in Hongmeng. I suggest that you focus on recovering your mental strength. Sooner or later, you'll be able to use the law of space. Then, you should put aside your cultivation. You didn't die this time because the heavenly light shone on your body. Anyway, you're lucky that your cultivation was destroyed." Yang Qing scratched his head and asked, "According to what you said, if I survive the Tai Ching heavenly thunder tribulation and my cultivation is not destroyed, I will be considered to have entered the tribulation passing stage?" "That's right." Kristen nodded. "Since your skill can attract the Tai Ching heavenly thunder, and it's a very strong one at that, if you can survive it, your strength will probably be comparable to Poseidon's." Yang Qing was stunned. "What? Even if I survive it, I can only be on par with him?" Kristen looked helpless. "Do you think Poseidon used his full strength when he fought you?" "He didn't even use his full strength. And he didn't even take out his divine weapon, the harpoon. If he had used his full strength from the beginning, you wouldn't have had to wait for the heavenly thunder. You could have reincarnated directly." Yang Chen took a deep breath and laughed dryly. He asked, "Then do you know what will happen if I pass the last level of the jade clear heavenly lightning?" Kristen shook her head and said thoughtfully, "I don't know either. Tens of thousands of years ago, the strongest Hua Xia cultivators were the 2 who survived the Tai Ching heavenly thunder tribulation. Their strength was comparable to Poseidon's. If they survive the Shang Qing heavenly thunder tribulation, I'm guessing they will be comparable to Zeus and Athena, or even surpass them. As for the last jade clear heavenly thunder tribulation, perhaps they will really become the immortals of the ancient times. But they haven't seen it themselves, so of course we can't say for sure." Yang Qing smiled. "Immortals. Interesting, they are called immortals." Kristen saw Yang Qing's strange expression, so she stretched out her white hand and waved it in front of his eyes. "Why are you in a daze?" You don't have any true inner force now, and you still want to rely on immortals? Yang Chun blinked his eyes and said, All right, I think I know what's going on. When I return to Huaxia, I'll find a chance to see if there are any books that record the content of this cultivation. That should be enough. You still don't want to give up? Kristen raised her eyebrows in dissatisfaction. I told you, the cultivation of Huaxia is against the natural order. It will only lead to destruction. Yang Qing shrugged. I'm alive and well. Don't worry, I still have so many women waiting for me to love. Why would I want to die? Love? Christine sneered disdainfully. Should I call Miss Lin and tell her that you just doted on my little maid? Hey, big mouth. Yang Qing hurriedly got up and said, Don't talk nonsense. I didn't shove the barrel of my gun under Sally, only the top, above. Looking at Yang Qing's rascal face, Kristen felt a little dizzy. Okay, stop gesturing. I won't say anything. I really can't stand you. Really, I don't know what's wrong with your brain. Did you get struck by lightning? Why do I feel that you are more shameless than before? Yang Qing didn't blush. He smiled evilly and said, I say, big mouth, why did you put me on your bed? Are you sleeping with me at night? Kristen winked at him without any shyness. What? Do you think it's a pity that we didn't do anything? Ah? You really slept with me? Yang Qing smiled bitterly. I was just kidding. You are really? Kristen looked resentful. What? Sleeping with you and you despise me? You know that's not what I mean. Yang Qing stopped smiling and said seriously, We are friends. Just friends. The kind of relationship where we can trust each other. And I promised him that I would take care of you. I don't want you to confuse me with him. Hearing this, Kristen's eyes showed a trace of anger. Her face turned slightly pale. She said, I don't understand what you are talking about. You are you. I want to sleep with you. Yang Qing sighed. Why do you have to deceive yourself like this? Shut up. Kristen suddenly slammed the table and stood up. Her eyes were sparkling. Some of them were red, and her breathing became rapid. Yang Qing spread out his hands and signaled that he would not say anything more. Kristen stared at Yang Qing for a long time before she raised her head and wiped the corner of her eyes. Sorry, I lost control. Okay, I'm done. I have to go to the recording studio to work today. I still have 2 activities to attend. I can't accompany you. You can play by yourself. Just tell Sally if you need anything. I'm leaving. With that, Kristen picked up a pair of crystal sunglasses from the side. Without taking anything else, she turned around and was about to leave. But after a few steps, Kristen stopped again and sighed. There's a guest. It seems that I can't leave for the time being. Chapter 750. As soon as he finished speaking, a large black Cadillac Escalade SUV slowly stopped in the parking lot outside the mansion. It inherited the consistent style of Cadillac, elegant, thick, and square. This 6.2-liter V8 engine was a rare sight in Huaxia. But in the United States it was cheap at only $100,000. First, 2 men in black clothes and sunglasses got out of the car. Then, they opened the door and a bald, short, middle-aged man got out of the car. As soon as the man got out of the car, he bowed humbly and invited the people behind him to get out. The person who came out was none other than Poseidon, who had changed into a navy uniform. Poseidon walked up to the door and glanced at Kristen. It was a polite greeting for the host. Christine glanced at them angrily and let them into the house. 2 bodyguards stood outside the door. Poseidon brought the bald man in and walked to the dining table. He glanced at Yang Qing, who was still chewing on his bread, and sat down. Yo, old man, you're jumping ship too fast. You were a chef in Hawaii yesterday and now you're an officer in the United States Navy? Yang Qing laughed. Poseidon said expressionlessly, Yang Qing, my name is Prandelli. I'm an honorary admiral in the United States Navy. I'm not joking with you today. I just want to put an end to this. The bald, middle-aged man bowed his head humbly. You must be Your Majesty Pluto. I'm the current director of the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation, Robert Mueller. It's an honor to represent the FBI to express our respect to you. Cut the crap. Spit it out, Yang Qing said impatiently. Robert smiled. It's like this. General Prandelli has confirmed that you're not the bad guy who attacked our fleet. We'd like to express our regret and apologies for suspecting you and causing an awkward situation between the two countries. We're here to apologize and ask for your forgiveness. Kristen snorted. Yang Qing is already like this. What's the point of apologizing? Robert was a little embarrassed. He forced a smile and said, Miss Kristen, I know that we were careless in this matter, but we are just ordinary people. It is indeed difficult for us to see clearly. Please calm down. Yang Qing understood. So, be it Kristen or Prandelli, the United States knew about the awakening of the Creator. Come to think of it, as the world's only superpower, the United States couldn't possibly only have Blue Storm. Just like the siblings Stern and Alice in the Cromwell family, although they had always been regarded as the scum of England, no substantial measures were taken to interfere with them. Obviously, the British government was secretly aware of their identities. However, the chief god was the last taboo of the secret organizations in every country. Unlike the United States this time, when they encountered a situation that was difficult to resist, they would definitely not disturb the chief god. Even if a main god didn't belong to a specific country, he would still have some feelings for the country where his physical body resided. Moreover, if he encountered a situation that violated the Treaty of Gods, it would be reasonable for him to take action. Christine didn't want to pay too much attention to it. She turned her head away and didn't want to talk. That's it. Yang Qing frowned. Why do you have to make a trip for such a small matter? Can't you just make a phone call? Robert smiled shyly. It's like this. Because Hua Xia is working with us to track down the person who framed you, we may need your help to verify some information. But it definitely won't take a few days. If we can't find anything in 3 days at most, we won't trouble you anymore. We hope that you can stay in the United States during this period and give us some help. Why me? Isn't there Prandelli? Yang Qing asked. I want to go back to Hawaii to cook. Also, that person is imitating you. Prandelli's tone was unchanged. Yang Qing thought for a moment and nodded. All right, I agree. I'll stay in Los Angeles. You guys can go. Thank you, Your Majesty Pluto. Robert revealed a hint of surprise and hurriedly bowed. Prandelli rose to his feet and led the way out. When he reached the door, he looked back and said, In your current state, you can't use the law of space, and you don't have the cultivation base of a Chinese technique. I advise you not to show your face too often. You have a lot of enemies, Yang Qing smiled evilly. I didn't expect you to care about my life. I just don't want Hades to die completely. Prandelli didn't stay any longer and went back to the car. Robert said goodbye to Christine at the end and then left. Seeing the Cadillac drive away, Christine walked to Yang Qing in confusion and asked, Why did you agree to that, Robert? You don't look like someone who would obediently cooperate with the FBI. Yang Qing smiled excitedly. Since I'm already here, of course I have to play before going back. You don't know how much pressure I have in Zhonghai. It's not easy to deal with either side. I need to rest and recharge before I can settle all those women in one go. I get it, Kristen said coldly. You didn't have the chance to have fun when you were in Zhonghai, and now that you're here, you're the only one. You want to have a good time like before, rolling around in the wildflowers, right? Am I that kind of person? I love my woman with all my heart. Yang Qing said solemnly. You do love them with all your heart because you have a headache for them, but it doesn't mean that your body is purely loyal to them. The best proof is that you didn't let go of my maid the moment you woke up. Christine shook her head helplessly. Forget it. You've always been like this. But I'm puzzled. Didn't you plan to turn over a new leaf and stop fooling around? Why do you seem to be more open after being struck by lightning? Am I imagining things? Yang Chun stood up and stretched his body. He put his hands in his pockets and walked slowly to the floor-to-ceiling window. Looking at the scenery below the mountain, he said leisurely, "What difference does it make if I'm able to let it go or not? How comfortable, how happy, as long as it's not against nature and reason, as long as it's not against my heart. Right and wrong, it's just a trace of other people's obsession. How can everything in this world be loyal to me? Only I know what I love in my heart and what I hate in my heart. No matter what I do, whether it's dissolute or shameful in the eyes of others, as long as I cherish it, I will protect it. True love can last forever. Why should I care about the moral and ethical of the world?" The man's back seemed a little hazy in the sunlight. Christine listened quietly and looked at him. Suddenly, she had a kind of trance that she didn't know why. It was as if this man was not in front of her at this moment. But he did exist. At this time, the maid, Sally, who had finished cleaning the second floor, walked behind Christine and asked softly and respectfully, "Master, do you need to remove the breakfast?" Christine turned around and said with a smile, "Sally, I'll give you an extra $1 million as reward this month. You have to treat Mr. Yang well." When Sally heard this, she couldn't suppress her surprise. Her face was flushed with excitement. She looked at Yang Cheng's figure not far away with seductive eyes. She couldn't wait to pounce on Yang Cheng and give him another blowjob. What a pity! If I let this bad Mr. Yang take advantage of me more, maybe it won't just be 1 million. Sally thought regretfully. Christine was slightly surprised. It was the first time she saw the shy little maid show such a charming look. She smiled bitterly in her heart. What reserved, pure? In fact, as long as you give me enough money, it's nothing. At this moment, Sally was complaining that Yang Cheng didn't do enough for her. When Sally went to clean up the tableware happily, Yang Cheng walked to Christine and said softly, "Actually, I didn't know this side of this girl was in her bones. But at least you don't have to feel that you caused her to be bullied by me, right?" Christine turned around and looked at Yang Cheng with some suspicion and novelty. "You really seem a little different. Although you used to be weird, I at least knew what you were thinking. But now I feel that I understand you, but I find that I can't see through you," Yang Cheng grinned. "Miss Love, in your long life, I wonder if you've read a book called The Dogs of Babel? What's wrong? Everyone has more than one side. As mentioned in The Dogs of Babel, everyone has two hearts. The secret heart is hidden behind the ordinary heart. We will wear different masks for different people. People often can't see themselves clearly, so naturally they can't see others clearly." "What does this have to do with you?" Christine frowned. "If I have to say that it has something to do with me, then it's because what you see is me. I am me. I am not wearing a mask," Yang Cheng said with clear eyes. Christine was a little lost, as if she could see a whole new world in the eyes of the man in front of her. It was the first time that she lost the ability to think for herself in front of Yang Cheng, which made her feel that it was unbelievable. "Aphrodite, can I seriously borrow something from you?" Yang Cheng asked suddenly. Christine came back to her senses, sorted out her emotions, and asked in the same serious tone, "What? Money?" "What?" "I said money, borrow money," Yang Cheng said pitifully. She thought that the man who talked a lot of reason would say some concluding words, but it turned out to be borrowing money? Christine let out a long breath, calmed herself down, and asked, "Why do you want to borrow money?" "Of course it's because I don't have money on me right now." Yang Cheng looked at the peerlessly beautiful woman in front of him as if he was looking at an idiot. Christine was startled again, and a rare blush appeared on her cheeks. I mean, what do you want money for?" Hee. Yang Cheng smiled embarrassedly. "I want to buy some gifts to bring back to my wife, so that the guilt in my heart will be a little less. Christine glared at him, gnashing her teeth. "No. If you want money, ask your subordinates for it. At most, I will lend you a car and let you live here, and you want to use my money to buy gifts for your woman? Save it. In the end, Christine did not stay any longer, put on her sunglasses, and rushed out the door. That's not loyal enough. Yang Qing shook his head regretfully, thought for a moment, and ran to the kitchen. He asked the little maid, Sally, who was still in a state of passion, for a car key, and ran to the garage next to the mansion. Not long after, a blue Porsche 911 GT, like a sharp arrow, shot down the winding road towards the foot of Beverly Hills. Chapter 751. Although Beverly Hills was famous for being a wealthy area, it didn't mean that everyone here was rich. In fact, this place wasn't that heavily guarded, nor was it that difficult to enter. Every year, countless tourists would come to Beverly Hills for sightseeing. They would sit on tour buses and try their luck to see if they could see Hollywood stars. Of course, many tourists with bulging wallets would come here to shop extravagantly, which was definitely a great enjoyment. Roddle Street, Rodeo Avenue, and other famous blocks contained almost all of the most expensive shops in Southern California, and each famous shop had its own unique architectural style. The most expensive boutiques in the world were also stationed here. There were only things that you didn't know, and there was nothing that you couldn't find. The magnificent exhibition hall was as magnificent as an art gallery, and there were too many visitors to attend to. The world's most expensive shopping mall, Rodeo Dri, was also located here. The interior was decorated with hand-carved marble and brass doors, and the sky-high arched pillars and fountains highlighted the elegant and luxurious style of the mall. In Beverly Hills, there had always been an arrogant saying, "Don't ask the price when buying things. If you ask, it means that you can't afford it." At this moment, Yang Qing, who was driving a Porsche slowly on the avenue, was indeed a person who couldn't afford anything. On both sides of the road, there were local residents taking a leisurely stroll or running in the morning. Most of them were white-haired old men and women. These Americans were so poor that they only had money left. In fact, their lives were quite boring. At least in Yang Cheng's opinion, they couldn't even eat stinky tofu mutton skewers. A blonde beauty in an Alfa Romeo stopped at the traffic light with Yang Qing. The two looked at each other, and the blonde beauty winked playfully. Yang Qing felt an itch in his heart and grinned unabashedly. Although there were female companions in the country and there was the warmth of kinship, the open-minded beauties abroad were actually tempting as well. It was really a good choice to relax occasionally. The blonde beauty saw Yang Cheng's silly expression and couldn't help but smile proudly. But when she saw the green light, she directly stepped on the gas and shot away like an arrow. Naturally, she wouldn't have any other thoughts. With the craftsmanship of a famous Italian factory, Alfa Romeo's performance was unquestionable. Even in Huaxia, you might not be able to buy such a rare sports car even if you had the money. However, in a world where even a Mercedes SLR that cost more than $400,000 could be seen everywhere, a sports car that cost more than $200,000 really wasn't that exciting. Because it was daytime, he naturally couldn't go to the nightclub. It was not romantic to casually pick up a beauty on the street. Yang Qing was not in a hurry. He had no money in his pocket, so it was useless to go. Therefore, according to the map of Los Santos in his mind, Yang Qing drove to the UBS branch. Since he wanted to play, it was more appropriate to withdraw some money. Because the Deep King's ring used the space laws to exist in a parallel space, the thunder tribulation didn't destroy it. Although Yang Cheng's mental strength was extremely low, it was not a problem for him to take a little ring from a parallel space. When the president of the UBS branch recognized the owner of the ring, his expression was naturally very interesting. At Yang Cheng's request, he hurriedly asked his subordinates to take out a VIP platinum card at the last minute. It was at least $50 million, which was definitely enough for Yang Qing to play in Los Santos for 2 days. Yang Qing took the card and did not stay any longer. It was almost time for the place in his mind to start. After driving back to Beverly Hills, Yang Qing did not return to the mansion to continue teasing the maid, Sally. Instead, he went to an auction house called Julian. The location of this auction house was not considered popular. There were a few bald black men standing at the door, but they were well dressed. 2 large bronze lion statues guarded the stone door on both sides, looking rather solemn. The reason why Yang Chun chose this auction house to buy his gift wasn't only because he didn't need to provide any identification here, and only needed to pay a deposit of 100,000 yuan. More importantly, the items here were usually the rarest in the world. When Yang Qing walked to the special deposit payment channel and took out the platinum card from the UBS bank, a strange look flashed in the eyes of the tall, fair-skinned man who was collecting the money. Obviously, even in Beverly, where the rich gathered, there were very few people who could take out a card with such a limit, not to mention a stranger from Asia. "Sir, please pay a deposit of 100,000 USD. The attendant gestured for Yang Qing to swipe the card. At the same time, he placed a gold number plate in front of Yang Qing. That would be his buyer's number. Just as Yang Qing finished swiping the card and was about to enter the auction house, a delicate female voice came from the resting area behind him. "Please wait a moment." Before the person arrived, a fragrant orchid-like wind blew over. A trace of ridicule flashed across Yang Qing's eyes, but he immediately hid it. He turned around and looked at the woman who had suddenly appeared with a blank expression. This was a graceful woman wearing a white, off-the-shoulder, low-cut dress with a black ribbon. She looked to be around 21 or 22 years old, but for some reason, she exuded the charm of a mature and beautiful woman in her 30s. Especially her slender waist, that pair of perky breasts with bottomless cleavage, and that perfectly round and perky buttocks. Just looking at them made one want to cover them with one hand. A pair of white and tender calves that were as smooth as jade, without the slightest bit of fat, straight and slender. In addition, the woman had a pretty face, a pair of plump red lips, and a head of black hair. Her eyes were sparkling, making her look exceptionally bright and moving. This kind of appearance was comparable to Qiangwei's, but Qiangwei was more heroic and seductive, while this girl was more mellow and gentle. The woman's expression that seemed to want to say something, but when it appeared, it could make any man who saw it feel a trace of tenderness. "Beautiful lady, are you calling me?" Yang Qing confirmed in English. The girl nodded shyly and asked in a small voice, "Sir, are you from Huaxia?" Yang Qing replied in a serious tone in Mandarin, "No matter where I am from, I just want to listen to Mrs. Story." The girl was taken aback by this sudden display of goodwill, and smiled shyly. "Can I ask for a favor, sir? Please call me Yang Qing." "Oh, Mr. Yang, I can ask for a favor. May I know your name, miss?" Yang Qing asked with a face full of anticipation. The girl was obviously a little overwhelmed by Yang Qing's enthusiasm, and her face blushed a little before she whispered, "Xiao. Xiao Qi Qing. Oh, it's Ji Qing. What a beautiful name, but no matter how beautiful the name is, it is not as beautiful as Miss Ji Qing." Yang Qing's eyes were full of fascination. "You flatter me." Xiao Qi Qing did not dare to look directly at Yang Qing. She turned her head away, and the pink spread to her ears. She mumbled, "Mr. Yang, I want to go to the auction house to buy something, but I left my wallet and ID in the hotel. I just found out, and I didn't have time to go back to get them. Can you help me pay for it? I will transfer the money to you when I go back to the hotel." As she spoke, Xiao Qi Qing looked at Yang Qing eagerly. A pair of eyes that could speak actually had a hint of a plea. Yang Qing asked anxiously, This? Miss Ji Qing, please don't be like this, please don't cry. It's just a small favor, it's no problem." Xiao Qi Qing's face lit up, and she smiled like a flower. "Really? Mr. Yang, are you really willing to help me?" "Of course, isn't it just a matter of a few dollars? What is money in the face of love? I believe that Miss Ji Qing is in such a hurry to buy something, it must have some important meaning, or else you would not choose a stranger to make such a request." Yang Qing said righteously. God knows when the two of them had developed feelings for each other, but in short, he seemed to understand. A trace of sadness flashed across Xiao Qiqing's face. Yes, there are 2 auction items that my grandfather specifically asked me to get before I came to the United States. He is not in good health now, and I want to get them to cheer him up after I get them. As she spoke, Xiao Qiqing was about to cry, but she could not continue. Yang Qing sighed softly, and quietly reached a hand behind the girl's back, hugging her delicate and smooth shoulder and gently caressing it. Miss Jiqing is really a kind girl. Don't worry, I will definitely help you get the item. Even if it's something that I want to buy, I will transfer it to you when the time comes. Xiao Qiqing shifted her shoulders a little uncomfortably, but she could not escape from Yang Qing's clutches. In the end, it seemed that she had to rely on this man to complete the auction, so she let Yang Qing touch her. It was not a problem to bring a female companion to an auction, and Yang Qing did not actually need to pay an extra deposit. He directly informed the waiter, and entered the venue with Xiao Qiqing. As Yang Qing walked, his hand slowly fell on Xiao Qiqing's slender waist. Xiao Qiqing's body was surprisingly soft. In the past, Yang Qing only felt that Anxin's body was soft enough, but when he touched Xiao Qiqing's body, he finally understood what it felt like to be soft as if there were no bones. With such a woman taking the initiative to come to him, Yang Qing was not stupid enough to think that it was a pie from the sky. But he was looking for a bedmate to take a comfortable vacation. This kind of soft body that could make one's heart melt with just a touch. No matter what scheme she had, he would first sleep with her. Besides, who knows, she might really be interested in his jade tree in the wind. Although he was the only one who thought so. Walking to a seat in the front row of the venue, even the buyers from other countries in the venue turned to look at them. Xiao Qiqing's gentle temperament was really eye-catching. Yang Qing still put on a sanctimonious, spending a lot of money for a beauty look, and solemnly asked, "Miss Jiqing, what does our grandfather want to buy? Let me know in advance, and I'll take it as soon as I come out." Xiao Qiqing sneered in her heart. This man was really not a good person. Today, she did not catch him for nothing. Such a shameless man. He must have done many bad things in his daily life. A fat pig, if not slaughtered, he would be a scourge to a good girl. They hadn't even spoken a few words, and he called her name directly and touched her body. That was fine, but why did his grandfather share it? But on the surface, Xiao Qiqing's eyes were still red, and she was touched and ashamed at the same time. She said, "Grandfather's life has been very good. In this auction, there is a bottle of fine wine from the Mordang Hero Winery. In addition, when grandfather and grandmother got married, they couldn't buy a diamond ring. Now, he wants to give grandmother a piece of jewelry before he leaves, which is the lustrous pink diamond ring that will be auctioned this time." Hiss! Yang Qing sucked in a breath of cold air, revealing a face of embarrassment, and sighed. "This wine is easy, at most a few $100,000, but that lustrous pink diamond ring is a world-famous jewelry, at least more than $10 million US. It's not easy." Chapter 752. Xiao Qiqing's eyes flashed with a hint of pain. She forced a smile. "It's okay. I'm already very grateful that Mr. Yang could help me. I dare not ask for more." "Miss Jiqing, don't say that. Because of Miss Jiqing's sincerity, kindness and sincerity, I, Yang Qin, must bid for the ring and wine today. Not only for Grandpa, but more importantly for Miss Jiqing," Yang Qing said affectionately. He did not forget to get close to Xiao Qiqing's pink lip. Although he did not kiss them, he was very close. He could smell the sweet fragrance of the beauty. "Thank you so much, Mr. Yang. When we get back to the hotel, I will transfer the money to you immediately," Xiao Qiqing said as she bowed her head in gratitude. In fact, she was moving her red lips away from this bad guy's face. Yang Qing patted his chest and said proudly, "It's just a little more than 10 million. In ancient times, there was a Yang Yuan's riding the red dust concubine's smile. Today, Yang Cheng's 10 million gold Jiqing smile will not be outdone. Ha! Xiao Qiqing's face was full of shyness. Her eyes were full of charm. But in her heart she was nauseous. What kind of lousy poem is this? It doesn't even rhyme. If you don't know how to recite poems, don't show off. This fat pig is not only stupid, but also disgusting. With Yang Cheng's bragging and Xiao Qiqing's false pandering, the auction began unknowingly. The first few items were neither low nor high. In fact, it was just a warm-up for the buyers. Most of them were sold for more than 100,000. When a bottle of wine was displayed, the auctioneer briefly introduced, "I believe that most of the ladies and gentlemen present are people who know wine. This bottle of wine is from 1945, from Chateau Morden. It is a 5-liter collector's edition. 1945 was one of the best years for wine in the 20th century. I believe that everyone can understand the value. The starting price is $110,000. For things like wine, the older it is, the greater the risk of drinking it. Because many old wines, although seemingly unchanged, have long become a bottle of vinegar. Of course, as long as you don't open the seal, everything will be fine. Therefore, only those who truly loved ancient wine would be willing to pay a high price. If it was for the sake of drinking it, it would actually be a bit of a loss. After all, the older the wine, the better the taste." Very quickly, people in the venue began to call out bid. The bids went from 120,000 to 130,000 before they gradually stopped. Only then did Yang Qing pick up the sign and say to Xiao Qiqing, "Miss Jiqing, look, I'm going to make a bid for you." Xiao Qiqing cursed in her heart. Her face was full of gratitude. "And thank you, Mr. Yang." Yang Qing raised his placard with a stupid expression on his face. "Hey! I offer you 150,000. Will you sell?" The people in the hall looked at them with disdain. If it wasn't for the fact that the occasion wasn't right, they wouldn't want to be associated with such a vulgar tone. Xiao Qiqing also showed a look of embarrassment. In her heart, she scolded Yang Qing for being a rich playboy. He had no manners at all. However, she also believed that he was an idiot. This price was far higher than the real value of the bottle of wine. Of course, no one competed with Yang Qing. So immediately after 3 calls, the deal was made to Yang Qing. Yang Qing winked at Xiao Qiqing. Xiao Qiqing finally smiled with some difficulty. She wanted to directly strangle Yang Qing's neck on the spot. The auction continued. After a few smuggled antiques were auctioned, the other treasure that Xiao Qiqing mentioned also appeared. The auctioneer pointed to the big pink diamond ring in the anti-theft transparent box and said, "This is our last auction item today. I believe it is also the reason why most people are here. This ring is made of a 5-carat pillow-shaped bright pink diamond. It is inlaid on a ring designed by the famous jewelry brand Graf. This rare pink diamond was mined in South Africa. Pink diamonds are different from other colored diamonds. The color of pink diamonds is said to be formed when the diamond is exposed to huge heat and pressure during the movement of the Earth's crust. Therefore, the color is particularly charming and rare. The starting price is $11 million. Each bid must not be lower than 100,000. I bid 11. 1 million. 11. 2 million. Soon, a few female tycoons, whose eyes began to shine, and a few male tycoons who wanted to win the favor of the women, began to compete to bid. For these real super tycoons who were worth billions, jewelry worth 11 million was actually not much of a challenge. This was because the value of jewelry would not depreciate if nothing unexpected happened. When the price reached $10 million, the crowd finally began to quiet down. The fat white female tycoon who made the super high bid spoke Russian. Obviously, she was a tycoon from Eastern Europe. She shouted until her neck turned red. Seeing that no one was bidding, her eyes were full of excitement. It was as if wearing that ring would return her to the prime of her youth at 18 years old. Hey 13. 14 million. Yang Chen raised his card, and spoke plainly without any intention of stopping. When the female tycoon heard this, she first glared at Yang Qing. But then, as if she had a cerebral thrombosis, she panted and fainted on the spot. In the panic, the bodyguards helped her out and sent her to the hospital. Only then did the auction finish the final procedure. This price was not particularly expensive for the tycoons. The key was that there was no shortage of good jewelry in the world. Also, if they took too much cash, it would affect their business. Therefore, no one competed with Yang Qing again. Yang Qing held Xiao Qiqing's soft waist with one hand and smiled affectionately. Miss Jiqing, this number contains a lifetime of love. Do you see it? Xiao Qiqing sneered in her heart. A lifetime? Isn't he just trying to play with me and get rid of me? But she still couldn't hide her emotions and gratitude. With tears in her eyes, she said, Mr. Yang Qing, you're so good to me. After we get the item, we'll go back to the hotel and I'll transfer the money to you immediately. Sigh, money is a small matter. There's no rush. But Jiqing, why don't you call me Brother Yang? It's more intimate. Of course, you can call me Brother Yang too. Yang Qing winked. Xiao Qiqing felt nauseous. She lowered her head and forced herself to say, Brother Yang. Yang Qing laughed heartily as he led the delicate beauty through the procedures. After swiping his card, he rejected the police and the bodyguard's offer to escort him home. With the pink diamond ring in one pocket and the bottle of wine worth more than $100,000 in one hand, his other hand was naturally wrapped around Xiao Qiqing's slender waist. From time to time, he would pinch the woman's soft flesh. Xiao Qiqing suppressed her strong disgust and followed Yang Qing out of the auction house. She asked, Brother Yang, where's your car? I took a taxi here because I'm not familiar with the roads here. Yang Qing pointed to the blue Porsche 911 GT in front of him. This is it. Get in, I'll take you to lunch. Lunch? Xiao Qiqing hurriedly shook her head. With a serious expression, she said sincerely, No, let's go back to the hotel immediately. I need to transfer the money to you before I can anshin. Is that so? Sigh, alright, I really don't care. For a beauty like Miss Jiqing, even 30 or 40 million is worth it. It's not something that can be measured with money. Of course, if Jiqing wants to go to the hotel, I'll be happy to. Yang Qing smiled obscenely at the end. Xiao Qiqing snorted coldly in her heart. You can be smug all you want. In a little while, you'll be finished. After getting into the car, Yang Qing asked for the name and approximate location of the hotel before driving there. It was a 5-star hotel on the west side of Beverly Hills. Although it was not big, it was known for its elegant decor and comprehensive service. The location was also quite secluded, belonging to the category of luxury hotel that was far away from the hustle and bustle of the city. Along the way, Yang Qing did not forget to put his hand on Xiao Qiqing's thigh from time to time. Because the Porsche was in manual transmission, he had to stretch his hand out. Xiao Qiqing had no choice but to accept it, pretending that she was being rubbed by an animal. When they were about to reach the hotel, Xiao Qiqing stopped them. Brother Yang, don't drive to the hotel. It's troublesome to get in and out of the parking lot there. Just park on the street outside. Yang Qing's face was full of admiration. Jiqing, you're so considerate. Alright, I'll listen to you. The two got out of the car. There were not many people on the street. Yang Qing very naturally held Xiao Qiqing's hand and slowly walked in the direction of the hotel. Xiao Qiqing naturally led Yang Qing. After turning a corner, she pulled him and said that they were going to take a shortcut. They directly entered a 2-meter-wide alley between the residential houses. When they reached the middle of the alley, 2 bearded men wearing sunglasses and hats suddenly rushed out from the exit in front of them. They stood in front of Yang Qing and Jiqing in a domineering manner. Robbery! Hand over your money and valuables. One of the slightly older men, chewing gum, looked down at Yang Qing condescendingly. Xiao Qiqing immediately showed a look of fear. She shrunk her body and slightly stepped back. Yang Qing showed a trace of a frightened expression. He quickly dodged behind Xiao Qiqing and pushed Xiao Qiqing in front of him. He said with a trembling voice, How can you rob in broad daylight? Ha! Asian monkey, is there a law that says you can only rob at night? The big man's face was ferocious. He signaled to his accomplice behind him. The big man slowly took out a black pistol from his coat pocket. He seemed to be very bored as he wiped the dust off the gun. The meaning of threat was self-evident. Xiao Qiqing clearly felt that Yang Qing was grabbing her skirt. He was shivering behind her. His face showed a trace of contempt. A good-for-nothing playboy. Even when he really got into trouble, he still behaved like this. This world was really not the way it used to be. Seeing that Yang Qing kept hiding, the big man frowned and said, Hey, buddy, how long are you going to hide? Do you think you can be saved by hiding behind a woman? Let me tell you, there is almost no one passing by here during the day. You better be tactful. Otherwise, my brother and I will make a move. Yang Qing quickly raised his hand. Don't hit me. I'll give you money. That's more like it. The big man laughed. At the same time, he couldn't help but look at Xiao Qiqing with an excited expression. Xiao Qiqing's back was facing Yang Qing. She nodded approvingly at the big man. On the other hand, Yang Qing put on a pained expression. He sneaked out from behind Xiao Qiqing and took out the pink diamond ring from his pocket. He didn't have the face to look at Xiao Qiqing and said in a low voice, Miss Xiao, I'm sorry. I have to protect you. This ring, I'll give it to them. Xiao Qiqing's expression was indifferent. She couldn't be bothered to continue her act. But at this moment, Xiao Qiqing seemed to have sensed something. She raised her head and exclaimed. She wanted to shout something, but she didn't have the time to do so. Thud! Thud! 2 potted plants that had fallen from the balcony of a residential house landed right on top of the heads of the 2 Caucasian men. Soil and plants splattered all over the ground. The 2 men were still in the midst of their complacency. For some reason, they fainted on the ground. Even their eyes were open. Seeing this, Yang Qing took a step forward and stepped on the white man's body. He laughed and said, Look at this. Look, Qiqing. The heavens must have been touched by my love for you. The heavens are helping me. It's obvious that the 2 of us are fated to meet each other. Such a good thing happened to us. I knew it. I'm such a brave and upright person. How can a good person like me not be rewarded? Xiao Qiqing stood dumbfounded. She looked at the big man who had fainted on the ground. Then, she looked at the arrogant man who was intoxicated. She almost vomited blood on the spot. Chapter 753. Qiqing. What's wrong with you? Call the police. Yang Qing waved his hand at the beauty who was in a daze. Let the police arrest them, then call a few reporters from the TV station to interview and report. We can still go on TV as heroes. Maybe we can even get a bonus. Go on TV? Get a bonus? Xiao Qiqing was about to faint. Not only was this guy stupid, but he was also fantasizing about being a hero. He was already so rich and he still wanted a bonus? Xiao Qiqing's mind raced. It seemed that this guy was really stupid. He couldn't even see through her plan. She might as well continue acting. She couldn't let him take advantage of her for nothing. She immediately walked forward and took the initiative to hold Yang Qing's arm. She smiled sweetly and said, Brother Yang, let it go. They're just small bandits. There's no need to call the police. Let people go wherever possible. Maybe they have relatives and children. Let them go this time. Yang Qing was moved. He looked at the woman's pitiful expression. Qiqing, you're too kind. I'll listen to you and let them go. As he spoke, Yang Qing kicked the thigh of the burly man on the ground with a proud look on his face. Xiao Qiqing despised him. If he hadn't fainted, he would have wet his pants. But she put on a gentle face and said, Brother Yang, let's go back to the hotel. Don't worry about them. I'll transfer the money to you. Yes, yes, let's go back to the hotel. To your room. Yang Qing smiled happily again. The two walked into the hotel together. Yang Qing occasionally rubbed his arm against Xiao Qiqing's full chest. The soft and dense touch was very enjoyable for Yang Qing. Xiao Qiqing didn't want anything to go wrong at the last minute. She had to suppress her hatred and let this guy take advantage of her. There weren't many people in the hotel during the day, and the price was set to be a niche, high-end hotel. They took the elevator all the way to the guest room on the 5th floor. It was so quiet that they could hear each other's breathing. At the door of the guest room, Xiao Qiqing looked at Yang Qing with sparkling eyes. Due to the constant rubbing of the sensitive spot on her chest, the woman's face was pink like a rosy cloud, which was very attractive. Brother Yang, I want to get the room card. Go ahead, I'm waiting. Yang Qing grinned. If you don't let go, it's hard for me to open the bag. Xiao Qiqing gestured at the orange leather bag hanging on her waist. It was hard to open the zipper with one hand. Yang Qing had a look of realization. He reluctantly let go of the warm and soft arm that he had been holding tightly, allowing Xiao Qiqing to open the bag with both hands and search for the room card. Once the door was opened, the moment he stepped in, he smelled an orchid-like fragrance. Yang Qing took a few deep breaths and clicked his tongue in an unsightly manner, as though it was delicious. Xiao Qiqing felt disgusted when she heard that voice. She tried her best not to look at the man's face. She lowered her head and walked to the study table in the room. She opened an Apple laptop and said gently, Brother Yang, I'll go online and transfer the money to your account now. The amount might be huge and it might take some time. Do you want to drink something? Oh, anything is fine. There's no rush. Yang Qing replied. Xiao Qiqing sneered in her heart, but she only put on a shy and reserved expression. She walked to the fridge and opened it. I'll get you some red wine. It's leftovers from last night. I hope you don't mind. Jiqing gave it to me. Even poison tastes good. Yang Qing said seriously. Xiao Qiqing covered her mouth and chuckled. She looked at Yang Qing shyly and pursed her lips. She took out 2 glasses and poured some from a half-empty bottle of red wine. As soon as she finished pouring the wine, Xiao Qiqing frowned slightly. She pulled at the clothes in front of her chest and said embarrassedly, Brother Yang, I'm sweating and I'm not feeling well. Why don't you rest first and drink some wine? I'll take a shower and then come out to transfer the money. Shower? Yang Qing nodded in satisfaction and said with a mischievous smile. Of course, no problem. Why don't I shower with you? I'm sweating too. Xiao Qiqing pretended to be angry and pouted. Brother Yang, I won't talk to you anymore. All right, I won't shower. I won't shower. Yang Qing waved his hand and gestured for Xiao Qiqing to go in. Xiao Qiqing walked to her suitcase and opened it. She took out her thin underwear and said affectionately, Brother Yang, you're not allowed to peek. Yang Qing quickly put on a straight face. Jiqing, do I look like that kind of person? I, Big Brother Yang, value being a gentleman the most. I know Brother Yang is a good person. Xiao Qiqing's beautiful eyes were like a seductive fox. She smiled sweetly and jogged to the bathroom. Yang Qing looked at the woman's swaying buttocks under her skirt and swallowed his saliva. Although he knew this woman didn't have good intentions, he was still intrigued. When Xiao Qiqing went in to shower, Yang Qing looked around the room with great interest. The room was decorated with light green artworks, simple but elegant beige bedding. The TV and the speakers on the bedside table were all advanced models. The floor was covered with thick blankets, and the bathroom was clean and tidy. It was indeed worthy of a 5-star hotel. Yang Qing glanced at the red wine Shui Jiqing asked him to drink. It was dry red in color and fragrant. He picked up the glass and chuckled. Without any hesitation, he gulped it down. After finishing 1 glass, the taste was really good. Yang Qing also drank the glass of wine Xiao Qiqing gave him, poured himself a large glass, and put it on the bedside table. Then, Yang Qing quickly took off his shirt and shorts, leaving only a pair of flowery boxer briefs, and sat down on the only large double bed in the room. Picking up the wine glass, Yang Qing carefully tasted it for a while. Seeing that it was about time, he put the glass down and leaned on a few large white pillows, pretending to be sleepy. In a muffled voice, he said to Xiao Qiqing in the bathroom, Jiqing, Jiqing, I'm a little sleepy, hurry up. In the bathroom, Xiao Qiqing said in a clear voice, Hey, brother Yang, I'm almost done. Gradually, the sound of the water quieted down. Through the frosted glass, he could see the soft silhouette of a beautiful snake, gently wiping her body in the bathroom. Just the width of the curve on the silhouette made Yang Qing, who was squinting his eyes, feel that his little brother was spitting fire. He didn't know how old this woman was. She looked like a young girl in her early 20s, but her temperament and figure were very much like a mature woman in her 30s. It was really alluring. When the bathroom door opened, Xiao Qiqing was wearing a white blanket robe provided by the hotel. While drying her black hair, she walked barefooted to the bedside. Yang Qing was lying on the bed like a dead pig, saliva still dripping from the corner of his mouth, forming a big character, and his legs were especially wide open. In this way, the tower between his legs was especially eye-catching. Xiao Qiqing's face had long lost the gentle expression of a little girl from before. Her youthful and charming face was cold and calm. She glanced at Yang Qing's body with some disdain. When she saw the towering pillar, she frowned, bit her lip, and muttered, This body looks quite strong, but it's as timid as a mouse. He's just a stupid piece of trash. Pervert, he's already unconscious, but that naughty thing still refuses to rest. As she spoke, Xiao Qiqing threw away the towel she used to dry her hair, walked to the suitcase, and took out a digital camera. She moved to the bed, stretched out her hand, and grabbed the only pair of boxer briefs on Yang Qing's body, and shivered. It's not that I want to see your dirty thing, I just don't want you to harm good girls in the future. Today, I'm robbing the rich to help the poor, and I'm messing with stinky men like you who do whatever they want once they have money. This is called boundless virtue. After saying a lot of words, she finally convinced herself to overcome the shyness of a girl. Xiao Qiqing's hand forcefully pulled. The big thing under Yang Qing's crotch was finally exposed to the air, and it even swayed a few times arrogantly. The hot momentum made Xiao Qiqing's face turn red, and her heart beat wildly. It's really bad. It's not honest even when it's asleep. Xiao Qiqing thought bitterly. In order to get rid of this body, the girl turned on the camera, adjusted the angle, and started to take a 360-degree shot around Yang Qing's naked body. Rich people were not like ordinary people. In their eyes, money was just a number, but face was something that was essential when they went out. Especially men, they could even break their heads and bleed for the sake of face. In ancient times, there were many who died for the sake of face. Therefore, Xiao Qiqing was very clear that as long as she had the photo, it would not be a problem to take away more than 10 million worth of jewelry in front of Yang Qing. Even if she threatened to take 10 million, Yang Qing would not dare to refuse. In this era where the internet was so developed, it was too easy to spread digital information. No one could guess how many copies there were, and no one could stop the spread. If this plan really caught a rich man with impure intentions, it would be very smooth, because no super-rich man would risk his reputation for more than 10 million. But it was a pity that Xiao Qiqing chose the wrong person from the beginning. At the last moment of the photo shoot, Yang Qing's sleeping body suddenly rolled all the way to the side of the bed, and both of his hands grabbed randomly as if he was sleepwalking. Ah! Xiao Qiqing was shocked by the sudden change, and she exclaimed. Her leg was actually hugged by Yang Qing. Chapter 754. Jiqing. Jiqing. Your wine tastes so good. Yang Qing mumbled in his sleep. He closed his eyes and said, My head is so dizzy. My body is so hot. Your body is so cool. Let me hug you, you. How did you? Xiao Qiqing could not believe that Yang Qing had not completely fainted. She should not have given him the wrong medicine. Could it be that after being placed in the fridge, the medicine's effects had been reduced? Without any time to think, Xiao Qiqing struggled to free herself from Yang Cheng's arms. However, Yang Cheng's arms were like steel bars. Even if she wanted to pull her leg out, there was not enough space. That's strange. Why is this evil man so strong? A fierce look flashed in Xiao Qiqing's eyes. She had already been taken advantage of so much. It was only right for her to get some of it back. With this in mind, she could not help but sneer. Fine, you won't let go, right? Since you can't fall asleep even after being poisoned by the dream token, I'll give you some 10 fragrant bone softening powder. Let's see if you still have the strength to do anything bad. As she said that, Xiao Qiqing placed the camera on the bedside table. She pulled open the drawer and took out a seemingly ordinary white porcelain bottle. She carefully brought the bottle's mouth close to Yang Cheng's nose. When the bottle's mouth was in front of Yang Cheng's nose, Xiao Qiqing immediately pulled out the red stopper. She even deliberately brought it close to Yang Cheng's nostrils. You perverted and evil pig. Let's see if you still have the strength to hug me now. Xiao Qiqing snorted coldly. She stuffed the bottle back into the drawer and threw it back into the drawer. Just when the woman thought that everything was over and that she could easily escape from Yang Cheng's arms, she suddenly realized that Yang Cheng's arms were still tightly gripping onto her. Xiao Qiqing revealed a look of disbelief. Her watery eyes widened as she lowered her head to look at the man lying on the bed. She was suddenly stunned, because at this moment, Yang Qing had already raised his head with a profound expression, revealing a trace of an unfathomable smile at her. I, Yang Qing, trusted you so much. The first time we met, I put in so much effort and money for you. I didn't even get any tangible benefit. It's one thing for you to threaten me with a gun, but why did you have to poison me? TSK. I heard it, 10 fragrant bone-softening powder. That drug seems to be very potent. Don't tell me you're going to cripple me, Yang Qing said with a sad face. No, that's impossible. Xiao Qiqing was frightened and absent-minded. She shook her head slightly. She suddenly felt that she had changed from a hunter to a prey. Why, you seem to be disappointed that I'm not poisoned. Yang Qing smiled evilly. Then let me comfort you. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Qiqing felt her body lighten. She was lifted easily by Yang Qing. He spun her in the air and threw her onto the bed. Without waiting for Xiao Qiqing to resist, Yang Qing had already pounced on the woman. Both his hands grabbed her and both his legs used his lower body to block her. The two of them faced each other. Their eyes met and their breaths mingled, warm and moist. Yang Cheng's action of pressing down on her was considered to be an intimate contact with the soft beauty. Xiao Qiqing's skin was exceptionally smooth and every inch of it felt exceptionally soft. What was enjoyable was that the woman's body seemed to be covered with a layer of cool water. Even through the towel blanket, he could feel the slight coldness coming from within. A pair of bulging snow-white peaks pressed against Yang Cheng's chest. The two lumps of bouncy temptation made Yang Cheng's body squirm uncontrollably. He could clearly feel the wonderful feeling brought about by the two protrusions. Below, a pair of white and tender thighs, due to Xiao Qiqing's efforts to resist, were constantly rubbing against Yang Cheng's legs. The soft flesh that was like white tofu was exposed to the air. Every time they came into contact, it was like a clear spring gushing past. He was worried that if he exerted a little more strength, it would shatter like a water flower. Xiao Qiqing's jet-black hair was still wet. It was scattered on the white bedsheet. Her mellow and wine-red face was as red as the frost in February. Her pair of beautiful eyes were sparkling with dew. At this moment, she finally realized that from the beginning, her thoughts had been guessed by this pretentious guy. He had been playing with her all along. From the initial panic, to the subsequent unwillingness to admit it, at this moment, there was only a stubborn and nameless anger left. She had actually been played by someone? Yang Qing lowered his head. From the position of the woman's neck, his lips pressed against the cool, snow-white skin. His lips slid down to Xiao Qiqing's ear, and he used his teeth to lightly bite on the pink earlobe. The tingling sensation, coupled with the aroma of red wine in her mouth and nose, made Xue Jiqing shiver uncontrollably. Her dimples on her chest blushed an intoxicating shade of red. So, you were pretending all along. Xiao Qiqing choked back the tears of humiliation. Yang Chun clicked his tongue in wonder. Miss Jiqing, why is your body so soft like tofu in water? I've never met a woman before. You're so soft and cool. You're the most valuable treasure I've seen today, shameless. Xiao Qiqing cursed angrily. Ha ha. Yang Qing shook his head indifferently. I didn't do anything. It was Miss Jiqing who brought me to this point. If Miss Jiqing had given me the money, and I had given you the two things, we would have been even. It was Miss Jiqing who insisted on poisoning me. She even poisoned me twice. She even took a picture of me as a souvenir. I had no choice but to resist. Humph, if you didn't have evil intentions, you wouldn't have touched me the moment you saw me. Xiao Qiqing said disdainfully. I am a normal man. Today is a rare opportunity for me to come out and talk about life with a beauty. If I didn't touch a beauty like this, then I would be a hypocrite. Although I am not an evil man, I am not a gentleman either. It's just a touch. I won't make Miss Jiqing pregnant. Yang Qing grinned. Besides, I won't stop Miss Jiqing from touching me. I am very generous. You scoundrel! Xiao Qiqing was so angry that she wanted to kick this man away. But Yang Qing was pressing her body down. If she made too much noise, she would only be taken advantage of by the man. Go on, shout a few more times. It'll be more exciting if you shout more. What are you trying to do? Xiao Qiqing could no longer care about anything else. Me? Yang Qing smiled easily. Since you've tried to harm me time and time again, of course I can't let it go. It's rare to meet such a good bed partner. Moreover, none of us are good people. There's no need to care. How can I let this go? Yang Qing was excited. Ignoring the woman's murderous eyes, he sat up from Xiao Qiqing and straddled the beauty's legs. At the same time, his hand reached for the collar of the bathrobe. This kind of loose bathrobe was only tied with a belt. With a slight pull, the full peaks inside would pop out. Yang Qing couldn't wait to bury his face in them, but just as he was about to make his move, Xiao Qiqing's eyes suddenly turned fierce. Her pair of white arms that had regained their freedom lifted up to block. At the same time, 2 fingers on each of her left and right hands fiercely pecked at 2 precise spots on Yang Qing's hands. Yang Qing didn't stop her. He let the 2 hands stab at different spots on his wrists and palms. Xiao Qiqing thought she had succeeded. But after she hit him, she realized that Yang Qing was only looking at her with interest. His smile was especially wide. Miss Jiqing, you really keep surprising me. First was the dreamlike token, then the 10 fragrant bone-softening powder that I've never heard of. Now you're using acupoint sealing to hit Mitsuchi and Higu acupoints. If not for the fact that Miss Jiqing doesn't have any internal energy, I would have thought that she was a female disciple of some ancient martial arts sect. I was even worried that a bunch of old nuns and old Taoists would come and fight me to the death. Yang Qing said with a sigh. Xiao Qiqing looked at Yang Qing in a daze. Then she cried out, You were sent by that old man? What old man? Yang Qing didn't understand. A hint of panic flashed across Xiao Qiqing's eyes, but there was more bitterness and coldness. Don't pretend. You know about internal energy and ancient martial arts sect. And even if I don't have internal energy, it's impossible for a normal person to not react to my acupoint sealing. You must be an expert sent by that old man to capture me, right? Or are you sent by the Luo family to take me back? Yang Qing was even more confused. But in his heart, he more or less knew that this woman had escaped. but she wasn't his woman, so he couldn't care less. He curled his lips and said, I can only tell you that what I said has nothing to do with you. I just want to spend half a day rolling in the sheets with you. As for anything else, I don't know, and I don't want to know. I advise you to stop resisting. You can't escape, and I don't want to be too violent. Since you can't grasp the chance to escape from my hands, then quietly endure my little revenge. Humph. Xiao Qiqing suddenly smiled coldly and looked at Yang Qing with ridicule. It seems that you really weren't sent by them. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in such a hurry to die. Yang Qing laughed and said, If there's anything that can make me stop now, it's my wife rushing over to stare at me. Otherwise, even if you know any powerful experts, I'm too lazy to care. You have a wife, but you're still fooling around outside. Men really aren't good. Xiao Qiqing looked at him with more and more contempt. Yang Qing was quite embarrassed and scratched his head. Look at what you're saying. I was thinking about my baby wife, so I thought of going to the auction house to buy some gifts to bring back to my country. Who asked you to disturb my originally peaceful spring water? It's you who made me do bad things so quickly. I'm guilty. You're as timid as a mouse, and you still want to push this kind of responsibility to a woman like me. Xiao Qiqing glanced at him contemptuously and turned her head away. If you want my body, take it. But let me tell you in advance, you won't even know how you died. Yang Qing saw that the woman had given up resisting and was waiting for a good show. He muttered a few words and his eyes swept from the woman's face down for a while. Gradually, a trace of surprise appeared in Yang Qing's eyes. Strange. Miss Qiqing, why are there so many deadly poisons in your body? That's not right. These poisons are enough to kill thousands of people, but you're not affected at all. What's going on? Xiao Qiqing suddenly turned her head, her eyes as sharp as ice blades. You? How did you know? You make it sound so scary. Of course I have to see what's going on. Yang Qing curled his lips. You see? You saw through it? Xiao Qiqing's face finally showed a trace of seriousness. She asked with a trembling voice, You? Who are you? Chapter 755. Me. Yang Qing kept it a secret and replied, Of course it's the man who wants your body. You know what I'm asking, but since you don't want to answer me, then I won't ask anymore. In any case, I only have myself to blame for falling into your hands. I didn't see through you. Xiao Qiqing gritted her teeth, her heart was filled with doubt. This man was so strange that he could easily see through her body. This gave her a glimmer of hope, and she said, Since you can see that my body is filled with deadly poison, do you still want to use force? Yang Qing raised his eyebrows. Why not? Aren't you afraid of death? Xiao Qiqing looked at the man as if she was looking at a monster, and said in a hoarse voice, My body, blood, organs, and bones are all highly toxic. As long as some of the secretions in my body touch your body, it wouldn't be strange for your entire body to fester in a short period of time. Furthermore, aren't you curious why my body is filled with poison and I can still live so normally? It doesn't matter, thinking about it is a waste of time. Dying under a peony flower, becoming a ghost is also a romantic. You're simply an idiot pervert who's courting death. Xiao Qiqing was about to go crazy from anger. Although she had said these words to make the man give up on her, she had indeed saved his life. Yang Qing ignored her and licked his lips in high spirits. His hands untied the belt of Xiao Qiqing's bathrobe, and then he pulled the bathrobe open. A snow-white body that looked like an ice sculpture appeared in front of Yang Qing, carrying the sweet fruit fragrance of the shower gel and the faint milky fragrance of the woman. Xiao Qiqing's willowy waist was extremely slender, forming a sharp contrast with the woman's pair of unrestrained fat white rabbits. Her collarbone seemed to be exquisitely carved, suddenly exuding a delicate aura. Because of her nervousness, Xiao Qiqing's delicate body trembled, and tears welled up in the corners of her eyes, making her look especially lovely. Because of this, The pair of soft tofu in front of her chest also trembled. Yang Qing was worried that they would melt with a single touch. Looking further down, under the woman's flat abdomen was a pair of exceptionally round and plump buttocks. Under a pair of flesh-colored lace panties, a small patch of fragrant grass could be seen, sparsely scattered. Yang Qing had a spineless thought. It was worth it to be struck by lightning for this bedmate who had delivered herself to his doorstep. Xiao Qiqing silently closed his eyes, the corners of his mouth revealing a trace of a self-pitying smile. Yang Qing no longer pressed down on her and quickly took off his boxers. Seeing that the woman was giggling with her eyes closed, he couldn't help but ask, "What? You look forward to it? Come on." Xiao Qiqing suddenly said. "Huh? Ever since I became sensible, I never thought that a man would have a relationship with me in this life, so I never thought that this day would come. But since you insist on doing this, and you're not even afraid of death, then what's there for me to be afraid of? At most, you take away my innocence, and I'll send you to the next world. We don't owe each other anything, but don't die too ugly," Xiao Qiqing lightly said, revealing a sense of indifference and boredom. The room became quiet. Yang Qing looked at the woman with a complicated gaze for a while. "Since you've said so, do you dare to do one thing in front of me?" Xiao Qiqing opened her eyes and looked at Yang Qing, who suddenly became serious. "What?" Yang Qing gloomily pointed at the woman's two round and beautiful legs that were tightly pressed together. "You've closed your legs so tightly, it's not easy for me to help you take off your pants." Xiao Qiqing's anger that had just calmed down was ignited again. Her eyes were filled with shame and anger, and she was so angry that her chest was heaving up and down. She couldn't wait to pounce on the man and bite him to death. "You'd better die an ugly death, the uglier the better," Xiao Qiqing cursed through her teeth. She suddenly sat up and quickly took off her underwear and threw it on the floor. Then she lay on the bed like a corpse and spread her legs, revealing the peach garden in the middle. "Okay, are you satisfied now?" In front of a man whom she had just met for the first time, she unreservedly exposed the most private part of her body for him to see. Xiao Qiqing didn't know what was going on. Perhaps it was because she couldn't see the end of her painful life, and she didn't want to continue like this, or it was because she let go of all her reserved instincts in a desperate situation. In short, she really wanted to die, but she also felt a sense of relief. Yang Qing stared at the bottom of the two white and flawless thighs. The pink valley was really more beautiful than any landscape painting. "Have you seen enough? Is this the first time you've seen a woman like this?" Xiao Qiqing said unhappily. No matter how reckless she was, she still felt uncomfortable in her heart. Yang Qing came back to his senses and smiled foolishly. "I've seen quite a lot, but it's rare to see such a beautiful one." Looking at the man's silly smile, Xiao Qiqing knew that he was praising her seriously, but the praise was involuntarily. No matter how unwilling Xiao Qiqing was, she also shyly felt a little moved, and her eyes were filled with love. Suddenly, both of Yang Chen's hands grabbed onto the two piles of snow with a little force. "What are you doing? It hurts." "Ah." Xiao Qiqing was just about to scold Yang Qing for being rude, but she didn't expect that at that moment, there was a piercing pain coming from below. A wave of boiling hot current instantly entered her body, and completely pierced through the tunnel that had been sealed in ice for more than 20 years. Xiao Qiqing's tears instantly rolled down uncontrollably, wetting the snow-white bedsheet. She knew that in that moment when she wasn't paying attention, she had bid farewell to an era of being a girl. Furthermore, this man who took away her youth would die very soon. Yang Qing giggled. His hands became very gentle as he caressed the delicate skin. "I was afraid that you would be too nervous and tense up your nerves, which would cause more pain, so I attracted your attention. Very soon, it will become more and more comfortable. I guarantee that you will fall in love with this feeling. I'm an experienced fighter, not a flowery one." Looking at the man's proud face, Xiao Qiqing sneered. You better think of a way to let yourself live a little longer. If you have any last words, say them quickly, although I won't care about you. Sigh, look at you, we were just like water and milk. Why do you have to say such words that spoil the mood? Yang Qing shook his head regretfully. You should be able to feel that the thing you left in my body is a little cold. Xiao Qiqing said with a smile. Yang Qing was stunned for a moment. He carefully felt it, and immediately felt that something was wrong. According to common sense, after entering a woman's body, his spear should be wrapped in a warm feeling, but Xiao Qiqing's body was strangely cold. This woman was actually cold-blooded? No wonder, from the beginning to the end, he couldn't feel her body temperature rising at all. Her skin felt as if it was soaked in water, and her body temperature was originally lower than normal. Because of this, although Xiao Qiqing was a virgin, not a single trace of blood flowed out, and the blood in her body had long solidified. What was even stranger was that strands of yin qi, from Xiao Qiqing's body, began to gradually enter Yang Qing's body through his precious fellow. Yang Qing frowned. In your body, not only is there poison, there is also an innate cold poison? Xiao Qiqing sneered. So what if it is? To think that you still have the mood to ask me and think about these things. It's already too late, you can't be saved anymore. Yang Qing nodded his head with interest. That might not be the case. After saying that, Yang Qing forcefully pushed his butt against her. Xiao Qiqing's pretty face paled. She had just become a woman. When Yang Qing forcefully pushed into the depths of the bud, she almost fainted from the stimulation. My dear Miss Qiqing, we've just started. I've already said, I won't let you go if I don't get justice in half a day. Yang Qing laughed heartily, ignoring Xiao Qiqing's incredulous gaze, and just like that, he wantonly worked on her newly cultivated body in the long afternoon. In this quiet and secluded hotel room, mandarin ducks were intertwined, jade acacia, and the sound of music was faintly discernible. Following Yang Qing's tireless campaign, Xiao Qiqing's initial slight pain gradually became better. At first, the woman was still trying hard to understand why this bad guy, after intimate contact with her, not only did he not die from the cold poison invading his body, but he was also so powerful. But later, with Yang Qing's wave after wave of wild attacks, Xiao Qiqing felt like she was sitting on top of the clouds, rising and falling, like a lonely boat in the vast sea, completely forgetting everything else. Yang Qing tirelessly moved the woman's soft body into various positions. This Xiao Qiqing's body was really soft to the extreme. Perhaps because of her cold body constitution, she could perfectly display all the strange positions. Her skin was as smooth as silk, making Yang Qing unable to let go. Seeing that the woman's expression gradually became a little unfocused, and even her moans were subconsciously gasping, Yang Qing then realized that he had actually exercised for most of the afternoon unknowingly. After venting for the third time, Yang Qing let Xiao Qiqing lie down peacefully. He picked up the glass of red wine left at noon, drank it up, wiped his mouth, and said to the woman who was in a semi-conscious state, "This wine is good, and your medicine is also good. It is colorless and tasteless, and didn't affect the taste of the wine." Xiao Qiqing gradually woke up, and she was extremely lazy and powerless. Looking at the man in front of her who had defiled her for several hours, she felt that she was dreaming. Even if she had no experience in this aspect, she had never heard of anyone who could do this for an entire afternoon. Are you really okay?" Xiao Qiqing couldn't believe it and asked emotionlessly. At this moment, for her, she couldn't even hate him. Yang Qing stretched out his hand and patted her white thigh, stirring up a layer of rippling flesh, and asked, "Are you feeling uncomfortable?" Xiao Qiqing frowned in puzzlement. After being asked by Yang Qing, she then realized that there seemed to be something wrong with her body gradually. A trace of surprise flashed through Xiao Qiqing's watery and hazy eyes. Her dispirited face was completely covered up, and she trembled while covering her mouth and said to herself, The poison is gone? How could this be?" Yang Cheng looked at the woman who was crying tears of joy with a warm smile. Although you don't say it, I can guess it. Although your physique is special, and the poison won't kill you, but it has been dormant in your body for a long time, and it will definitely act up from time to time. At that time, you must be in so much pain that you want to die. I'm afraid that's the reason why you aren't afraid of death. Originally, I wanted to find a partner to have some fun, but you lied to me and poisoned me, so I naturally won't be soft-hearted. But since you are a virgin, then I can't be too stingy. Take it as a tip and help you get rid of the poison.